Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. When you do things off of the normal day, you normally do things get kind of screwy. But nevertheless, we are here. We are back. It is I, your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can find me at News Nurse Need on Twitter. You can find me at TB Caps on Instagram.
South Carolina with Columbia down the way.
And that sound effect that you hear comes from none other than our man in Brooklyn. There's probably Christmas songs about where he's from, but nevertheless, Christmas was last week, so it doesn't really matter. One Agent _70.
What's up, everybody?
Tim's for my hooligans in Brooklyn.
I was about to say, I found another sound drop.
I see. Yeah, you kind of. Yeah.
Out there, all out there.
I mean, you just have a bevy of stuff to kind of go through, so it's not like you have no shortage of drops to find.
Exactly.
But
That's
also,
a little bit of a hint at some of the behind-the-scenes pain and suffering in trying to find Roddykat a good sound drop for to represent.
Yeah, pretty much. It's slim pickings for good drops for about South Carolina.
Yep.
But nevertheless, folks, we are back again, and you can find. Oh, I was about to say, despite Run DMC not choosing Brooklyn, obviously they are not from Brooklyn, as a setting for their Christmas song, it still works out some kind of way. But regardless. You can find this here podcast on the Cold Slither Podcast Network. That's cspn.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this podcast on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. And folks, it is fair to say that we are going to start off with a double dipping of one Pedro Pascal this week, because we are starting off with the last episode of season 2 of Star Wars: The Mandalorian, episode 8. So spoilers.
Oh yeah, spoilers. I know Roddykat puts that tagline at the beginning of the show, but for those of you who are catching us on YouTube, the warnings are here. We just gave it to you. We're gonna ring the spoiler bell right now for episode 8 of season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Indeed, as Sabala would say. And let me pull up the handy dandy recap here, even though realistically, this one's cut and dry, and I feel like I do remember it enough to where I don't necessarily need the recap, but we're going to do this anyway just to have some notes.
Right. That's good. I was about to say, if you could send me that link while I play our little theme snippets. It's a snippet. Don't let us get in trouble, YouTube. It's a snippet of what this show really means for this, what this episode really means for this fandom.
Give the people now. Give the people what they want.
That's right. We give them the people what they want. That's what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are doing.
As they tend to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the help of Peyton Reed directing this episode.
Wait, did he also write it too, if I'm not mistaken? Or was it...
Favreau wrote it.
Favreau wrote it. Okay, yeah. I forgot about that. So, we start off with... a chase in space, as you would, where you see an Imperial shuttle, not the most maneuverable thing, not the most maneuverable ship in the Star Wars universe, but, apparently it's seeming to be slightly outmaneuvering Slave 1 for a little bit. in the first couple of seconds of this episode before getting clipped by an iron cannon. You know, but we also see that there's one Dr. Pershing who we haven't seen since. Well, we actually have seen him this in a holo vid this season, but we've seen him a little bit more prominently in season 1. Dr. Pershing being the person, you know, who was doing experiments on one baby Grogu in the beginning of the season 1. So he's being, you know, shuttled somewhere. We don't know where. It doesn't really matter at this point. We can assume it's going to see Moff Gideon because they don't never really get into that part. But Slave One catches up. They disable the ship. They board the ship. There is a funny, to me anyway, exchange when the Mandalorian and Cara Dune board the ship, because one of the pilots is like, I don't know this dude, and then gets taken out.
Right. You know, there's this one hardcore Imperial who's just like, wait a second, man, and blows him away, and it's that Imperial who's a little bit on the hardcore side, who tries to give as well as he gets, because it's always funny to hear Imperials call the rebels terrorists,
right?
You know.
Yeah. Oh, and I guess and this is at this point is I don't think we mentioned this in past episodes, but a couple of episodes back, we may or may not have, we found out that Cara Dune, you know, played by Gina Carano or whatever, but is from Alderaan, and if you've noticed, if you've watched, she's got a teardrop tattoo, which I'm trying to remember if I've seen any more recently than this in like the in the comics or whatnot, and I don't remember. Doesn't really matter. But so the Imperial Guard kind of recognizes that
it's the rebel symbol, right? It's the rebel symbol in a teardrop.
Right. So, but I'm trying to remember if I've actually seen that in a recent comic or anything, but I don't remember if I have or not. So, but this Imperial shuttle pilot recognizes this and tries to get under. You kind of see where this is going, right? Well, you could almost see where this is going when he shoots the other pilot, but nevertheless, you know, when he starts trying to goad her,
right?
You already see where this is going, because he's got Dr. Pershing hostage. It's like, look, you know, y'all will be blamed for this if he gets shot. But I'm sitting here like, well, okay, even if you shot him, they could still shoot you. So you're in a bad position one way or the other.
Yep.
So anyway, after a little exchange where this Imperial was like, hey, I was on the Death Star, and Cara was like, which one? I'm like, okay, that was moderately funny, but also you already know. I see what you're doing there, though. Because obviously, it was, you know, it was only one that took out Alderaan. And, you know, and this pilot was like, yeah, this and that, and you know, act like Agent 70 said, and was like, yeah, it was, you know, it was a good thing that we got rid of that whole nest of terrorists, and then bloop, he gets taken out.
Well, he basically says before that, just a quick note. Before that, he says, think about all the people on those bases, right? Another attempt at humanizing the Imperials, because you know, this is right on the heels of the last episode where we get an episode of the Imperials trying and actually succeeding in or at least shipping some of that explosive stuff. I forget the name of it already.
Rhydonium.
Right, the Rhydonium. You know, they don't get away with it, obviously. You know, spoilers for last episode, but for the previous episode, episode 7. But you know, we do get a shot of the Imperials celebrating. So this is yet another little shot of, I don't want to say humanity, but at least something akin to that injected into the depiction of the Imperials in this episode.
Right. I mean, and it is a thing that has come up in, you know, sometimes jokingly in the past, where it's like, yeah, no one thinks about the contractors on the or you know, the volunteers on the Death Star or whatever.
Yeah, that was the Kevin Smith joke.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, you're right. It's like, yeah, it's a gang of people got killed for no reason, but at the same time, whatever. It is what it is. So as we go on, title cut right there. Um, the gang takes Dr. Pershing. And actually, there was something we forgot to mention about another thing from either last episode or but how cool is it that we saw the inside of Slave One, first of all, and two, the swiveling of Slave One as it's like taken off or whatever.
Right? Don't we get that in this episode, or is it last episode?
It was last episode. We see them inside, but they're already in flight on this one, so it's already kind of in position.
Okay, so it was at the end of last episode. I couldn't remember.
Mm-hmm. But I think we forgot to mention that. I was like, that was some cool stuff, like because we never got to see that, how that worked out, in that episode or ever realistically.
They actually mentioned that in the gallery episode for that just dropped.
Oh, nice.
For season on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely recommend that episode. It's pretty good. It's kind of like an overall view of the making of season 2 of The Mandalorian. So that's that gallery kind of documentary style series on the Star Wars section of Disney Plus. It's funny that you mentioned that because in terms of seeing the innards of Slave One function as it kind of assumes its flight position from its landing position, which has always looked very awkward to me.
Right.
We also get just as a quick note, it's always interesting to me. Like I said, I'm glad that you mentioned it, that we see the different ways spaceships change shape in order to land in Star Wars, in order to make space on the landing strips. Because what ship do we see when Slave One touches down? None other than the ship that we know. I know there's a name for it. I don't know if you know it, but it's the ship associated with one Bo-Katan Kryze.
Right. Which those because we've seen those in Rebels and a couple times we've seen those in Clone Wars and a couple times in Rebels. And I don't remember the name of them right off bat. But I thought they were Imperial at first, but that's not the case because I want to say those might be Mandalorian.
Right, they resemble TIE fighters.
Right.
The TIE, but they're not TIE interceptors. But what's cool about them is the way they come to a landing. And I know that in the first episode of The Mandalorian. Oh no! In the last episode of season 1 of episode 8, season 1 of The Mandalorian, it's actually the first time we see the TIE fighters' wings fold that way.
Right.
So in a sense, we also see this is our first live action look at those interceptor style fighters that the Mandalorians fly with their wings pointed straight up into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
They're landing. I know we've seen them in that position in Rebels and probably in Clone Wars, but it was definitely a sight to see in the live action depiction, to see how they portrayed it. So I thought that was cool.
Right. And we'll get to another ship, but this one is kind of a known quality because people have, if you've watched the movie, you've seen Imperial shuttles and the way they go and the way they fold up when they get ready to land, that kind of stuff. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Right. But as I mentioned, what the person that they seek out once they have the scientist in tow is none other than Bo-Katan Kryze, and it turns out just one of her fellow night owls, Cosca Reeves.
Yes. So yeah, they get back, and I'm thinking, I thought they were back on where they may have been. It doesn't really say, but they were back on that planet where the Mandalorian ended up getting the ship repaired by the
Trask.
I believe so. Probably, I can't remember the name of it, but that sounds right.
That was the name of the water planet, Trask.
Right. So, but anyway, we find them in a bar. Boba Fett and the Mandalorian kind of walk up to Bo-Katan and Cosca, and
I think desert-like planet according to this recap.
Gotcha. So and they go in, they ask for help, and then there's a little headbutting between Boba Fett and Cosca. Before we find out that apparently Boba and Bo-Katan know of each other, because as Bo-Katan says, once they start talking about, or before they really start talking about, what Din wants from them, what the help that Din wants from them. There's a little conversation between Bo-Katan and Boba. It was like, she's like, I've heard your voice 1,000 times, which she has because she was around during the Clone Wars.
Right.
And clearly, Boba Fett knows who she is because of. Actually, it's not really said, but I'm assuming that's also probably either a Clone Wars reference or just the fact that he knows of them because he was around, and he knows of the goings on Mandalore. Which he clearly does, would know.
Right, at least some of it.
Right, at least some of it.
Because he's busy doing his bounty hunting. Exactly. But I there was a couple of really cool lines in here. One is, and I really got a kick out of this. Shout out to Sasha Banks, that is, aka Kafka Reeves, aka Mercedes. I forget her last name.
Like Bernardo or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I remember her first name is Mercedes. Yeah. That's the easy part to remember, right? Mm-hmm. But she gets to say, and it's such an ironic line, I didn't know sidekicks were allowed to speak. I really got a kick out of that because I don't think she had very many lines in her first appearance.
Not many, but she did. Yeah, she probably had a couple at best.
Right, so it was definitely an ironically written and delivered line on her part, but she did get to shine in this episode, which was really cool to see.
Right.
Also, as you mentioned, Bo-Katan says, "I've heard your voice 1,000 times," but she also mentions, "Don't you mean your donor?" When in reference to the owner of the armor and his father,
right?
Being him being an actual clone, which is true.
Mm-hmm. Right, and obviously she could have, learned about this during the Clone Wars. It's not like it was that big of a secret. Well, yeah, it was like it was that big of a secret at the time. So, put it together. So, right. So regardless, she definitely knows about his origin story. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be another fight started up, but that didn't happen between them two. But yeah, the whole little thing between Boba and Costco was like, all right, we get a little fight scene here. I almost said it was unnecessarily, but it was actually kind of cool to see, just to see them two squaring off.
Right, and they broke out some WWE wrestling moves too. They had to throw in that spinning DDT. I was like, oh no!
Of course, because you got a wrestler in there. You got to do something. You got to make it work, right?
She's got to take a bump or two, right?
Exactly.
Or two.
I don't know if this worked. Now I was about to say she's got a job, but that's not. I don't even know if that's the right term to use here. So,
right.
I don't watch wrestling, folks. So don't. So anyway, regardless, moving right along. So after all of that happens, they talked, which is kind of the funny thing in the last in these two episodes is like all after whatever misunderstanding happens or whatever the case may be, then pretty much says that they have the child, and then anybody's just like, all right, I'm immediately on board. Because realistically, Bo-Katan did not have that much time with the child, or didn't seem to have any affinity with him. So it wasn't like, I mean, granted, yeah, they saved him from, the Quarians on the first meeting, but it's not like they really had that much interaction.
Mm-hmm.
But she's like, all right, bet, I'm with you. So they all go. They get back on. They pretty much come up with this plan to infiltrate Moff Gideon's ship and get Grogu back. And while they're sitting there plotting, and we see everybody in there, Fennec and Cara Dune, and the Boba's flying, so he's not there, and and pretty much everybody else that was Bo-Katan is also there, so they're plotting this out. But as they're making their plan, Dr. Pershing's like, yeah, what you thought about what's going on the ship is not the case, because they were basically under the impression that there weren't that many. There was using a skeleton crew on the ship, but we come to find out from Dr. Pershing that the Death Troopers who are there, they have a battalion of those. But what we come to find out from him is that they are no longer human as they once were. And as Dr. Pershing says, like, yeah, the human factor was the weakest link in the last couple of versions of Death Troopers. So they pretty much made them droids.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, okay, that kind of makes a lot of sense, especially in Star Trek terms. Because if you didn't know, if there's the thing you didn't know about the Death Troopers was they were pretty much dead humans that they reanimated and put in suits and, made them a little more badass. But, I guess that was supposedly a design flaw, and we have seen Death Troopers, relatively recent in the comic books, and obviously Rogue One, and here. So anyway, so he's like, yeah. So obviously since they're not just shoots and they're droids, they don't show up as life signs. So then they're like, well, how do you? They pretty much try to change their plan to where it's like, all right, fine, we got a diversion, so we're gonna take the ship, we're gonna take the bridge, and the Mandalorian goes after after Grogu, and they were like, how long would it take before they activate? Because what we also find out from Dr. Pershing is they take the Death Troopers take a little while before they spin up and they're active, because they take too much power to kind of pretty much keep on hand.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that into effect, they revise their plan a little bit. They take Fennec takes something, here's a control thing from Dr. Pershing, and gives it to Mandalorians, like, here, take this to kind of try to keep them at bay, just in case.
Cylinder.
Huh?
It's his code cylinder.
Exactly. So then the plan goes into effect where Slave One, they basically, they repurpose the shuttle, and make it like Slave One is chasing down the shuttle again, so that they could, get it on the ship, basically. Which that plan goes into action. It works. It kind of goes off. Well, mostly without a hitch, because a couple of TIE fighters. So basically, the plan was that, hey, use the shuttle, block the TIE fighter tubes, so that none of them would be able to get out. But a couple of them end up getting out. But Slave One pretty much handled them quite handily. But nevertheless, none of the others got out. But also part of the plan was that they were pretty much going to take the ship so that Bo-Katan could use it to reclaim Mandalore.
Okay.
Which I forgot to mention when in the last part when we talked about when they met up with Bo-Katan, it was like Boba was like, Mandalore's been glass, so I don't know what's the point of doing that, but but Bo-Katan's like, hey, that's our place. We're gonna take it. We're gonna take our spot back. Anyway. So plan goes into action. They get on the ship. Fennec and Bo-Katan and they basically do the diversionary thing and shoot down a bunch of loads of stormtroopers on their way to the bridge. And they're also, what other thing about this was they say that Bo-Katan says, like, Moff Gideon is mine, which you probably could tell that probably wasn't going to happen the way they expected it to be, especially knowing Moff Gideon, especially in what we know of, Moff Gideon seems pretty cunning. But regardless, we'll get to that in a second. So that happens. The Mandalorian, after the distraction happens, he makes for the brig where Baby Grogu is being held. Moff Gideon.
Just for a second, just pause here for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to mention something that nagged me a little bit when this was happening.
Mm-hmm.
The person that they picked to relay the distress signal and to announce that they're going to make a crash landing is Bo-Katan.
Yes.
So why on earth would they pick the one voice that Moff Gideon probably recognizes, even though he probably suspects something is up? And it's almost revealed later on that he might know even before, he might have known even before this, that Bo-Katan obviously is on his trail, because he's gotten wind of this probably. But you would think that they would have picked somebody else's voice, anybody else's voice, to yell into the into the comm system to yell out, we need to crash land. We're under attack. No, it's Bo-Katan's voice, and I'm like, come on, man, I know her voice.
Yeah,
So
and you
I
definitely
just want to mention that before you advanced any further into the plot synopsis, because we're already dealing with Mando in the Dark Trooper Bay.
Right. No, that's a good point. It's a good point. But also, you definitely get the sense that Moff Gideon knew something was up, regardless of whether he recognized that it was Bo-Katan's voice or not. I mean, some could say that maybe it could have been it could have sounded coming out the other end like it was disguised a little bit, because sometimes when they do radio chatter on in Star Wars, it does sound a little bit different. But at the same time, you're right about that, and I kind of agree with you on that part. But regardless of, he felt like he knew something was up, because you could even see it in his face as that part was going on. It was like, this something, something's going on here.
And shout out to oh my God, Giancarlo Esposito. His facial acting in this episode is awesome, and we will touch on this point again soon.
Absolutely. So diversion happens. Mando's going to the bridge. So I'm trying to remember if we found out whether they already took the bridge at this point, but we definitely see the Mandalorian kind of getting to the point. But we also see the Death Trooper spinning up, which apparently it took less time than they thought they were going to have for them to spin up and get ready to go, because we do see the motions of that happening as they're taking the ship. So by the time that Mando gets to the brig, they pretty much booted up. And Mando sees this and he was like, oh shit. But he just does his best to keep them from coming in. One happens to get in while the rest of them are still kind of behind the blast doors or whatever the case may be. So Mando ends up having a fight with one Death Trooper, which he has some problems with, but ends up taken care of after being knocked around a few different times.
Right, he has a lot of problems with this Dark Trooper. He really does have his hands full. He breaks out pretty much all of his Mandalorian tricks, from the gauntlets and the
flamethrower.
Exactly, the flamethrower, the wire, the whatchamacallit, the sparrows, the whole kit and caboodle, and he finally is able to take it out with his one main melee weapon, which is conveniently with him now, which is the Beskar spear that he liberated from
Morgan Ellsworth.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
Elsbeth. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, which we haven't really seen it. Well, we might have. I'm trying to remember if we've actually seen him using it in the cup last time. But regardless, we knew he had it with him. So now I admit it. At this part, I was like, where did he keep that? Because I don't remember seeing it, but I do remember seeing part of the spear kind of being poked up in the back of his armor. So he did, and it's because it's a long enough spear to where it's like it's pretty much as tall as he is. So it was like one of those things. Like, where the heck does he have it? But obviously, I think it's foldable. I mean, it's you can take it apart. But regardless, he used that, gets rid of,
I think it folded, actually. I think it was just, it's not one of those long spears.
Well, what I mean, not folded, but I think you could I
think he had it registered in like a section of his armor.
Right.
It might have been, I don't want to say magnetic, but he probably had like a section in his armor that he could just kind of slide that into like a sheath style so that it was safe.
Right.
It's like but listen, you're wearing Mandalorian armor. I'm sure you have little pouches and things attached to it all over the place where you can store that.
Right, but I'm saying though, like that would think, like if you just had that, fully out, that's a long enough spear. Like that spear is almost as tall as he is. So that's kind of thing. Even if you're walking around in armor, that thing would kind of stick out in the, in the back.
It did though. That's the thing. So, I always think of it as, how does Donatello store his bow staff? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you can see that though. He just puts it in the back of where his sash is. So
right.
You can see that.
That's what I envision is something that we're just not seeing on Mando.
Right.
We're just not seeing it. So
I guess. Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure that he's using to store it. But in any event,
yeah, it kind of doesn't matter at that point. But
because my next note was, you knew that Beskar spear was going to come in handy at some point, and this is where it was.
Pretty much.
This is the melee weapon, and it does come in handy in later scenes, and we will get to that.
Because as we also, because as we also come to find out, and what we have found out before now, Beskar is pretty much like adamantium in this universe, where it can block even lightsabers and any variation therein, and laser blast and all that kind of other stuff. So
exactly. Just to touch on this last point about the one Dark Trooper. One Dark Trooper is a handful for Mando. But you know what? Mando should be in concussion protocol after taking 7 punches to the dome right on his helmet from the Dark Trooper, knocking, dents into the wall. Like, seriously, this guy should have a concussion. Like, his brain should be like half jello at that point, right?
I kind of thought about that, right?
Bang, bang. Like, we don't know what kind of cushioning they have inside that helmet. Bang.
But it's also made of Beskar, so I was thinking at that point, because I thought that same thing, but also I was like, maybe there's some vibranium kind of component to Beskar. Yeah. But you can hear him say, because every time he gets hit, you can hear him say, that kind of thing. But yeah, I thought that same thing. It was like, yeah, he should be, his bell should be rung.
Absolutely. Concussion protocol, man. You get the ref's gonna call down from the booth to take him off the field.
Right.
So, but yeah. So Mando ends up finally getting the best of this one Dark Trooper, and he at least temporarily solves the problems of the rest of the Dark Troopers by ejecting them into the cold depths of space.
Yep.
But like I said, it's temporary.
Right. And then we come to find out on the other side of this, the rest of the group has taken the bridge, killed everybody on there. Moff Gideon is not there, to no one's surprise. Well, to no one's watching surprise. Let me rephrase that.
Right.
But the people there was like, where is he? Where is he?
Where else would he be? That was literally my next note. Where else do you think Moff Gideon would be?
Because you even see, like, when he gets the picture, like okay, I know what's going on here. Like, you can see him almost without actually walking off the screen. You can pretty much see his world turning. Like, well, I know where I need to be.
Right.
And which is where we come up to next, because we see Mando, opening the cell door only to find that Moff Gideon, Darksaber in hand, waving it over Grogu, menacingly, basically like, oh, is this what you wanted? So they kind of chat for a second, and Mando's like, look, I just want the kid. You can go about your business. I don't really care. I just want the kid. Which, in true villain fashion, Moff Gideon's like, oh, okay, you can have him. Sure, we're good. Like, we don't have. Yeah, I got what I need. So you're so sure. Go ahead and take the shot. And at this point, like during that whole scene, I was like, he's going to kill Grogu. I'm like, I'm going to be so upset. But knowing, if you've been spoiled about what happened, knowing that probably wouldn't be the case. Regardless, like I said, you never know. There could have been, well, at least at my viewing, you never know where that could have gone. But it was like, I don't see it could have happened, because I'm like, he's a 50-year-old kid. You wouldn't do that to a 50-year-old kid. But yeah, Moff Gideon probably would.
Yeah, probably would.
So Mando picks up Grogu, tries to walk out the door, but of course gets attacked by Moff Gideon and the Darksaber.
Right.
Puts Grogu down and defends himself.
I was about to say, hold on for a second before you move on into the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be real. Don't you think Moff Gideon could have at least made a legit escape if he just left Mando alone with the kid? If he just made a break for it at that point? Mando, right, I think, would have let him go.
Yeah, basically.
So that's what, I was just kind of like, why do you have to try to double cross him? You could have actually made a legit getaway attempt. But no, he's got to be a Moff Gideon. Right.
And even on the getaway front, he could have just basically, he had enough time to pretty much like, let me grab the kid, hit an escape pod or a shuttle and bounce.
Yeah, that too.
He, like you said, he could have legit got out of there if he really wouldn't. But yeah, it was like, of course not. This is not. it wasn't going to end that terribly. But then again, that would have also set up another season because he was like, well, we got away now, we got to come back. But apparently they had reasons not to do that, which we will get into, I guess. So yeah, so they start to fight. You know, and it's a relatively even match. You know, Beskar armor versus lightsaber, just pretty much, you know, one defense over the other. But you know, Moff Gideon's all right with the Darksaber. We can safely say that. But
yeah, but he's no swordsman. He's all effort.
Right.
He actually makes up for a lot of, you know, kind of his lack of real sword skill with effort and passion.
Right, like he's no Thrawn, basically.
Right, he definitely does, you know, wield the Darksaber, you know, okay, you know, he's decent with it, but he's not a real swordsman. So he does kind of get taken out by Mando's close quarter combat with the spear. So or you know, spear / staff.
Right, and his armor, because you know, first because he hadn't whipped it out just yet in the beginning of the fight, but then happens to whip out the spear real quick and, you know, defends himself. So that goes on, that happens, and Mando finally takes him down, you know, within a couple of minutes, and you see Moff Gideon's like, now what you gonna do? Or you know, he's basically Mando has the Darksaber. It was like, oh well, this should be interesting, and at the time you're thinking, well, what does he mean by this? If you're thinking about it, unless at this point you already know what he means by that, because it kind of comes up on some Clone Wars lore.
It definitely comes up on Clone Wars stuff. Yes. That's the thing. It's
and if Rebels,
you're versed in both Rebels and Clone Wars, this is where the conflict lies.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which is also cool. So
right, we're gonna talk about it some more. So.
Mm-hmm. So Mando brings Gideon and the Darksaber back to the bridge. Tries to give the basically Moff Gideon's I think he was saying something about actually no, he didn't say anything until the exchange happens. It was like because obviously Bo-Katan kind of wanted to take care of Gideon himself, but that didn't happen. Cara Dune is like, oh great, now we can interrogate him, Moff, you know, the Moff, because he's got a lot of secrets and, you know, and all the kind of good mess. Mando tries to give Bo-Katan the Darksaber, but if you are, as we just said, Steve, if you know about the lore of the Darksaber and in its place within Mandalorian's hierarchy and seen enough of Clone Wars and Rebels to know, it can't be just handed off. Basically, it has to be won in a fight. And I don't know why I keep messing up his name. Moff Gideon knew this quite well, so he was expecting to play Mando against Bo-Katan, which doesn't happen because they get interrupted by the Death Troopers coming back on board the ship.
Right. They are droids after all. Mm-hmm. They do have rocket boosters, or at least for short distance flying. So they finally engage as a platoon or as a battalion, however large of a group they were, and fly back en masse to the light cruiser and set off the alarms and make their way to the bridge, and eventually find themselves on the other side of the blast doors, and they literally try not blasting these blast doors down, but punching the blast doors down.
Which immediately gave me Lord of the Rings flashbacks. You know, when they were in Fellowship of the Rings, when they were in Moria, and they were trapped when they were trapped in the one hall, and the orcs and Pippin pretty much alerted them, or was it Pippin and Merry? One of them alerted them to where they were. Right, and then they came storming in, and all the orcs came storming in or whatever. Like, it kind of reminded me of that, because it was that kind of tension where there's like the doors being knocked down, and like they're pretty much staring at the door and, you know, getting prepared to go into battle because they knew shit's about to pop off. So it was kind of reminded me of that just a little bit. So yeah, the Death Troopers knocking down the door, and they pretty much get most of the way in. When
I was about to say we talked about we kind of glossed over the conversation about between Moff Gideon and Bo-Katan about the Darksaber.
Well, yeah, I mean, the final points was that, like I said, one, he was trying to pit Bo-Katan between with the Mando, because Mando was the one holding the sword, and she couldn't just take it from him, even though he was just trying to give it to him. And it kind of seemed,
I was going to say the point that I was making earlier, which is the kind of conflict that comes up from the previous canon that we have seen in. I even went and did a footnote. Look, I brought receipts.
Right.
See Rebel Season 4, Episode 2, Heroes of Mandalore Part 2, where Sabine Wren actually hands Bo-Katan the Darksaber, saying she should be the one leading Mandalore, and all of the clans agree.
Very
so good. There is history and precedent that that supports the concept of handing off the Darksaber, not in combat, but willingly and freely, the same way Mando wants to do it here. But in this case, Bo-Katan seems to be honor bound by some kind of code, the same way Mando's kind of honor bound to not take his helmet off. So they're all sort of they're all sort of subject to these stories and superstitions and traditions in their own ways.
Right, which I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was probably going to mention that also, because just like Bo-Katan kind of gave Mando some shit about the traditions he was following, she was still bound by that particular one. And just like Moff Gideon says, it's like, it's not the sword that has the power, it's the story of the sword, and how it gets into the hands of the person who's leading. Just as much. So I was like, yeah, okay, that makes, sure, that is definitely lore that's in there. So yeah, so that little conflict kind of happens, which, well, I guess we'll get into at the end of this about where that's going to end up going.
Right. So back to the conflict at hand, which is the Dark Troopers pounding on the door, saying, little pig, let me in, right?
Right, so Death Troopers are still pounding on the door, or start pounding on the door, and they kind of get most of the way through, when suddenly, out of nowhere,
the alarm rings.
Yes, and it just so happens that, the radar pings off, and out of nowhere, a lone X-Wing just so happens to just bop by, like, hey, I was just in the neighborhood, like, obviously, I can sit here and say it's a familiar X-Wing, but, there's been scores of them in Star Wars' history, and including in Mandalorian, so you can't really say that. But
what's familiar about it, what's really familiar about it, is that it's alone. There is that. That's the kicker. That's the big hint.
So if you're going in this fresh and you're not really knowing, you're like, okay, this is where even I, who kind of knows, who one was also got spoiled on what's about to happen, sort of, or at least who is about to happen, but things that happen in Star Wars, so this was like, okay, you see this X-Wing, just, it felt like this is where the episode kind of took a shift, and I'm not saying a shift for the good or bad, but it was just like, okay, this is kind of, you would think it was going to go one way to end this off, but even without knowing that what's about to happen is going to happen, like, okay, this seems to be a change. A swerve, if you will, in some case. But anyway, X-Wing comes by. Everybody's like, "Who the heck is this? Identify yourself. What's going on? We ain't got time for this. We got things. We got bigger fish to fry on the other side of this door."
I hate to quote Jar Jar at this time, but we's about to die,
right?
But who are you? About to die.
Exactly, but there's no response from the X-Wing's pilot, and I kind of wonder. I should have gone back and see this, because obviously you can see there's parts of an X-Wing that are noticeable. If you think about the top of it, so I was wondering if another thing that we end up coming about would have been seen in that shot, but I would but we'll get to that in a second. Anyway,
I was about to say normally would, but it's just so far away You probably would have had to like really zoom in on it.
Right, maybe. Like I said, I might go back and actually, which I did actually end up having to go back and watch the upcoming scene for a different reason. But X-wing lands while the Death Troopers stop what they're doing because apparently maybe they sense this going on or sense this happening. I'm not entirely sure, but they pretty much stop, which we don't know why they did that. But a lone figure steps out. No, well, we don't even see a lone figure, but we basically see a hooded figure, a dark hooded figure,
a hooded robed figure.
Exactly.
You know, all the alarm bells are ringing. They're all ringing. They're like, ding, ding, ding. Guess what's happening?
Especially if you know what time frame this is coming through, which is after Return of the Jedi. We see a lightsaber. We hear a lightsaber spark off.
No, don't jump to that. Don't jump to that because we talked about this just before the show. The first thing we see is the hooded, robed figure walking on the robes. Well, hold on. The next thing you see is a black and white shot. A black and white shot of this robed figure engaging a lightsaber and deflecting bolts on camera and taking out dark troopers.
Right.
And Bo-Katan, really one of the only people in this little fire team, right? That's protecting Grogu, right? Mm-hmm. Really the only person amongst this team that we know legitimately had experience with this type of
she's been around Jedi
of character says a Jedi,
right? So because that was right, and that was after we see like Agent 70 said, we see we basically get the closed caption, the CCTV shots of this going on.
Exactly, and even at this point in the history of the Empire, all they can do is afford black and white closed caption television. So that's the surveillance. That's the surveillance shot that we get because we do have to stay period correct, right?
Of course.
So we get that, and we see Mando turn. Mando is the one who reacts to this. That's who they show reacting to Bo-Katan saying a Jedi because he knows where they just came from.
Right. And he knows his mission, which was,
Right. They didn't just come from Typhon, but that was 2 planets ago.
Right.
Right. But that was essentially, he puts 2 and 2 together that this may in fact, and we find out that it is in fact a response to what Grogu does on Typhon.
Mm-hmm. And also, and speaking of responses, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was like, and then we get to what you mentioned, which is the best part, which is the confirmation.
Right. Well, so like Agent 70 says, Bo-Katan reacts. It's pretty much says, "Hey, it's a Jedi." And Mando.
Reveal happens a couple of stages. That's what I love. I love that the reveal happens in a couple of stages. And I jokingly said earlier, right before we started the show, and I pity the fools. No, I don't pity. You're not fools, podcast fans, but I pity you because the folks who watch this on video will see me clap like the penguin in the Bugs Bunny cartoon who was actually from Hoboken because like the little the wind up monkey with the cymbals, like literally clapping like an idiot watching this when it first came on the TV screen.
Right. So while this hooded figure is fighting, and Bo-Katan says that Bo-Katan was not only the one who reacts, and neither was the Mandalorian, because you see other shots of Moff Gideon also react to this at some point. It was just like, oh snap, because and like Agent 70 said, like Giancarlo Esposito's reactions are pretty priceless because it was like because he's like, oh snap, but you also see go ahead.
Even worse than that, and I'm going to go a little blue here, folks, and forgive me for this. We try to keep this mostly family friendly, I know, but Moff Gideon's oh shit, a Jedi face, like Roddykat said, it was priceless. you could just like pause it right there, and the look on his face because somebody said a Jedi, and he puts 2 and 2 together,
Right.
Because he knows what he has in Grogu to an extent,
Right.
So he knows why this would be something that a Jedi would be after.
Right, and reasonably assume that as intelligent as Moff Gideon would know of the Jedi, even if he has not had, even whether he's seen them or not, he knows of them, which he had. Well, no,
it's arguable.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's arguable that he probably has. We don't know actually whether he has or not. I was thinking of something else, but nah, he probably wouldn't have been around for that, or whatever. But regardless.
It depends on his age. That's the one thing that is indeterminate at this point. We don't know for sure. Given how old Vader was, at the end of Jedi, and given Moff Gideon's kind of nebulous age now, we are not sure if he was around for Order 66 or not.
Right. I feel like it's reasonably assumed he might have been, but yeah, you're right. We don't know.
We don't know.
Right.
So
anyway.
That being said, now I can check this off because I'm literally going through my list of notes as we go through these sequences because, I trust Roddy to go through the actual sequence, like doing his Luis impression. So I'm gonna give like the little notes that I jot down. We've gotten to the point where Giancarlo Stanton's Moff Gideon is panicking now.
Right.
Panicking.
Yeah, he's kind of shook.
Right. And we've seen the green lightsaber be revealed.
Right.
But
so
then
at this moment, So at this moment, pretty much anybody who's of Star Wars was a Star Wars fan knows who the hell this is.
Right.
As we see him systematically just taking down the Death Troopers just left and right, just like bloop, 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 bloop. And it kind of cuts between shots of them on the bridge watching the CCTV and, live action, the live footage of him just kind of going through, using the Force, using the lightsaber, just doing the thing, going through as only this person would. Until he gets to the door where the last Death Troopers are, he takes them out, and then I
was about to say, but you also have to, in the middle of the sequence, Moff Gideon tries to pull something.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. We'll get to that too. But also, and I think if I didn't mention this when I was going to, in the people's reactions to this, Grogu is propped up at a monitor, is watching this whole thing with great interest, so as some would say, as if either knows who this is or
Right. His ears, his face, his head perks up
Mm-hmm.
the second person's presence is known to him.
Right.
And as Roddykat was mentioning, you literally see Grogu reach out and touch the screen.
Right.
Know that this is someone who's responding to his call.
Right.
But as I was mentioning, like I don't know if you have another point to make on this, but Moff Gideon at least tries to make a move at this point.
Well, before that, I was just gonna say real quick that Mando notices Grogu, his intently staring at the screen also. So he also is putting things like, yeah, okay, he's putting everything together about where this is going. But now we can get to that part where so right before the hooded figure makes it to the bridge, or at least right before, as Agent 70 says, Moff Gideon pretty much grabs I want to say that's Cara Dune's rifle, which he had stupidly put down, and you sure?
Blaster, like one of the crew members. It was an Imperial blaster dropped by one of the crew members that they had shot down when they took the bridge.
Okay, but he had it. Well, that being the case,
no, it's on the floor, like where Cara Dune threw him.
Right.
You actually see it near the fallen body of one of the Imperials.
Right.
So when she throws him down, you see him fall down near it.
Right, but also a minute or two earlier than this, he notices down on the floor and covers it with his drape. So we know we knew it was gonna come back at some point, which was this point here. And while everybody's distracted with what's going on outside, he takes this opportunity to get up, still handcuffed, mind you. Shoots, pretty much takes a bunch of pot shots at Bo-Katan.
All right, pause. just for a second. I'm like, yo, does Beskar actually attract laser bolts? Because it seemed like every shot he took went right to her armor.
Right. And see, and that's why, which brings me back to why I had to watch that scene, because at first I was like, well, wait, hold on, because just like you, I was like, wait, and we're not really sure. We can reasonably assume that all of the Mandalorians that have shown up are all wearing some form of Beskar, well, or wearing Beskar that's been painted, with the exception of Mando. But so yeah, he's like taking shots, and we hear her react to it. So at the moment, you don't really know what's happened, but you can reasonably assume that if she does have Beskar, it's like, well, she should have not necessarily short it out, because you're gonna still. It's basically like wearing what it seemed like is pretty much like wearing a bulletproof vest.
Right.
Like yeah, the shots won't hit you, but you still feel it.
Right.
So Moff Gideon takes a bunch of shots at her, and then points towards Grogu, who is at this point on the ground. Mando sees this, takes the bullets for him, and then Cara Dune takes down Moff Gideon with a rifle butt, like bloop. Actually two, because they do two shots of it. So they shoot her, and you see two camera angles of her taking him down.
Right, because he tries to blow his brains out once he figures out that the jig was up. So he puts the blaster underneath his chin, but Cara Dune knocks him senseless and disarms him in the process. So that takes out that particular threat. So at that point, Moff Gideon is taken out, and I think at this point, Grogu makes his way to the chair to go up to the monitor.
Right, he makes his way back up to the chair to get back to the monitor. Look at that.
And Mando drags his sorry carcass from getting shot up by Moff Gideon up to where Grogu is watching on the closed circuit TV.
Right. And it was at this point where the hooded figure, and I almost keep wanting to say his name, but I'm not, because at this point, if you're listening and you know who, what, when, where, and why, you already know who it is. But the hooded figure ends up pretty much at the door at this moment, to where everybody's.
I was about to say, no, he's laying waste. He does a John Wick, but he also does a hallway scene. Very much like Daredevil on Netflix, but also very much like a certain Sith Lord at the end of Rogue One.
Yeah, and yeah, there's been note of that also. Yeah, that the people have mentioned.
Literally laying waste to a horde of Dark Troopers when only one of them gave Mando fits.
Right. So, which was also funny to see, because it was like, yeah, and everybody in, all of the party that was coming, the rescue party coming in and seeing this, it was like we said, Bo-Katan is pretty much the only ones who had the first-hand experience, and everybody was like, oh shit, like may have heard about these people in some kind of way, shape, or form, but we've never seen it in action. And I'm sure Mando was like, I feel like he probably did what he said. It was like, wow, it took me a while just to take down one, and this dude's just going through. And having never seen a Jedi alone, up until he met Ahsoka,
right.
Obviously he wouldn't have known too much about them, because he even talks about them like a race of people before then. But regardless, so all that aside, just to kind of get to the point here, hooded figure makes it to the door after taking out the rest of the Death Trooper, including the last one where he just pretty much crushes with the Force, which was a funny thing to see, but it was cool. Everybody on the other side of the door is still kind of in awe. Mando's kind of looking at Grogu's, seeing him at the door, and he was like, open up the door. And everybody, and then Finnick was like, are you crazy?
Yeah, Grogu basically motions to the door. Right. It's basically like, he like kind of,
like, let him in.
Closed caption, right? I think the closed caption said whines. Like basically like Grogu's whining, saying like, please, take care of that, open it.
Yeah, it's like, hey, let him in, let my man's in.
Right.
So Mando kind of picks up on this and was like, let him in, and Finnick and the other people was like, are you crazy? Like Finnick actually really does say, like, are you crazy?
No surprised that Fennec Shand of all of these people is saying that.
Right.
Like, what nuts? You know?
Right. Like, yeah, we don't know who that person is. Like, we just saw what this fool did. Like, and you want to let him in? You know, all but pretty much saying that. So Mando himself kind of takes care of the door, which I'm kind of surprised opened up the way it was bent. But that's
it only opened up partially. It didn't open up all the way.
Right, but still, it was like that door was in a shape.
Session, the damage.
Right.
I think.
Right. So door opens up. Hooded figure comes in, and this is when we get the big reveal. When he takes off his helmet, we see one gloved hand after sheathing.
Hold on, I have a sound effect for this.
He sheaves his lightsaber, lifts off the helmet, off the hood to see one Return to the Jedi era Luke Skywalker. And we have to say that because they do this the whole de-aged digital effect, which kind of still looks weird, but yeah.
Right, like PCN_Dirt mentioned the uncanny valley effect.
Yeah.
And I sort of understood it, but at the time I think I was smiling too hard and laughing too hard. And I just didn't it didn't hit me. I was just soaking in the moment, and I think that's really what Favreau and Filoni are going for,
right.
and Peyton Reed going for. You're just soaking in the moment,
right?
You know,
but yeah, I was kind of with dirt on that because it was like, wow, this is a weird looking. Like I get it, but it was also a weird looking face. And having seen other instances of this with Leia and Moff Tarkin and other folks that this has happened to in recent Star Wars, you know,
right. I definitely understand it, especially after the second, third, fourth, fifth, or sixth, or seventh viewing that I did. I understood it, but I'm more than willing to let that slide because in the moment,
totally.
First or second viewings, I was kind of like just happy, You know what? I mean, I was gonna save this for my overall thoughts, but I think it really drives the point home that this is what I always wanted to watch after Return of the Jedi. Not the sequels we got set so far in the future. It was this time period immediately following Return of the Jedi that I always wanted to see played out on screen.
I didn't want
to read a book. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to read a comic. Obviously, I was a little too young at that point to really appreciate that that the comics did exist. In a very long format, actually, by that point.
Yeah.
But they had put out several by that point. By the time Jedi came out, all I had were the Marvel Comics adaptations of Jedi. So what I really wanted was stories going forward from Return of the Jedi on screen, and I never got it. So it's this that that really fulfilled that particular wish for me. And I'm sure it did that for so many people watching this.
Yeah.
We go on and then maybe even touch on that thought again later.
Yeah, I will probably forget this fact later on, but I'll go ahead and say it now. It was like the Star Wars universe is a big universe, and there are many stories that can and have recently been told and probably will continue to be told. And I kind of enjoy that and not having it centered around the Jedi, even though don't get me wrong, I love me some Jedi Sith stuff and all, and the major players and all that kind of stuff. But the good thing about the Mandalorians is like, yeah, it's kind of been sort of away from that kind of stuff to a certain point up until we got to this last half of the season here.
Sure.
But regardless, it's always
a great
good to see
universe, and we're all really puny. We're just tiny little specks about the size of Mickey Rooney.
Okay,
that's from
Animaniacs. So anyway, so just to bring this home on the recap, Luke comes in and doesn't even introduce himself. He basically was like, huh?
I know there's a point I wanted to make about this too.
Okay.
So go on.
Yeah, so Luke just comes in and just all matter of fact was like, hey, Grogu, come on with me. But also Mando's like, are you a Jedi? I'm like, yeah. And it looks like I am, which apparently was. I mean, I don't know if because Mark Hamill obviously gets credited, one way or shape or form with this. And actually, I've meant to pull an article about his response to it, to this episode, which is what actually got spoiled, because apparently news sites don't know how to obfuscate things of that nature properly. Yeah, which is so stupid. But regardless, so I don't know if it was sound clips or actually him. I mean, I doubt if it was actually him now doing that, and it probably just looks like it sounded like they used sound clips, but I don't necessarily know. Regardless, the credit was him one way or another because it's his likeness. Regardless, so he calls out to Grogu, and Mando, like I said, Mando asks him if he's a Jedi, and he does. Grogu's like, I want to go. Well, because you can see Grogu kind of peeking out from the chair. And Mando takes it like, well, he doesn't want to go with you. And Luke's like, no, he's just waiting for your permission. To which, Mando picks up Grogu in a actually kind of a touching scene.
It's definitely touching. I was about to say, like there's definitely fans of this relationship who, when they see literally the parting of father and son,
lone Mando and child, yeah.
Like after 2 seasons worth of storytelling, when they see this point where there is a legitimate goodbye going on that's not induced by a kidnapping,
right?
It's definitely tugging at heartstrings here, and waterworks potentially flowing.
Right.
It didn't, because I was still clapping like an idiot. But
and this was right. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, but I know that there are definitely parts of the fandom out there that felt that way and were probably bawling their eyes out. Forget people chopping onions; they were well past that point.
Yeah, like it was definitely touching, and I will say again, shout out to Pedro Pascal for his portrayal of this. Which going into what we're going to talk about right after this, or yeah, I guess we can go ahead and but we might want to keep that brief because of time. But going into what we're going to talk about him also being in here, like shout out to him for some range, because he has done a lot with. I don't want to say a lot with a little with his character, but because he's in this portrayal, he's like kind of stoic and supposed to be like kind of matter of fact and just about business, like not necessarily like ruthless or anything like that, but he's just like I'm just going about my way doing my thing. But you can also see, even without him taking his helmet off, you could kind of tell that, and it was him in the suit for the majority of the time also. So he's done a lot of acting without actually saying anything, with his movements and his
and without being able to see his face.
Right, exactly.
That's the thing. That's the important part.
Exactly. Up until which comes to this moment here, because this was the moment that probably should have been waited until, that should have not happened in the last episode, but that's the less we said about that, the better. So him and Grogu is having this moment. Grogu kind of touches his helmet because he still has it on his hand. Someone like, I want to touch your face, but then Mando's like, all right. He takes off his helmet, and Grogu actually touches his face, which again another touching moment, and they have another little bonding moment before.
Eye in the house, including Mando.
Yeah, exactly, because you can see him kind of right. You can see him kind of wanting to well up, now up until when Luke and Grogu actually leaves, in the minutes coming up. So, but you could kind of just see it in his face. It's like, it's like he knew this moment was coming, but he still kind of hated for it. And we've all been there at some point. Puts Grogu down, who kind of attaches to his leg just a little bit until another familiar Star Wars character just so happens to come bopping in the form of
So you say booping in?
So well, yes, booping in. In the form of one R2D2, which again, like I was saying earlier, like if you probably had noticed anything about the X-wing, and if it was even noticeable, you probably would have seen him, in the astromech part of the X-wing. But you know, like I said, that shot kind of went by kind of fast, and unless you stopped it, like Agent 7 said, probably wouldn't know. But regardless, R2 comes in. Baby, you know, Grogu kind of turns around and I'm like, oh, what is this? Which I've noticed there have been an article or two. Well, I think there's an article we'll get to in the news section saying that there is a little bit more of a link here than we possibly know of, but it's also a theory that I kind of feel like is slightly a stretch. But like I said, we'll get to that in a moment. But R2 comes in. Huh?
I said there's a couple things that people are thinking about with regard to that, but go on.
Right. And for my part is I'm thinking Empire Strikes Back. So, you know, that's where I am with that. But like I said, we'll get to that in a moment. So Grogu turned around, sees R2, and there's an interaction between there's an kind of an interaction between R2 and Grogu, which I can see one way about it, but also like I said, the way I see it, you know, R2's just beeping, booping, and you know, doing this thing, and Goku's like, ooh, you know.
Another way of looking at it, which is the way I actually looked at it, which is the sense of recognition.
Right.
So that's the other train of thought that I think a lot of people had is, oh, there's a connection there that might be explored further on. We don't know.
Right. Well, see, I'll go ahead and say it now. So, so my part about it is like I'm kind of with you on the recognition part, but as far as R2 is concerned, it was like obviously we know that in Empire Strikes Back he runs into let me rephrase that. Not even just pretty much throughout the most of like the sequels and whatnot. R2 knows about Grogu's kind, Yoda. So he's pretty much been around Yoda and interacted with Yoda, so he recognizes Grogu for, you know, for the species he is. Right. And those were at that moment I was like, oh no, because obviously if you just taking it from Empire Strikes Back, Yoda pretty much terrorized R2 on Dagobah.
Well, what I was gonna say is, what do you think he's gonna do? Try to take away his torch?
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, like the way I read it, and maybe I'm reading too far into it, but I definitely am of the mind that there's probably some more recognition there than even that.
Right. Well, so
it might go back to Grogu's origins.
Well, so I'll go ahead and get to that right now, because yes, the article pretty much has a theory to where R2 may or may not have had something to do with Grogu escaping the Jedi Temple during Order 66, which again is kind of a stretch, but
it's not impossible given the time frame.
That's what I'm saying. It's not, but it feels like kind of a stretch in a way. But yeah, like you said, it's definitely not impossible. So
it's not, because you wonder, where is he during that time?
Right, and we do know he was at the temple, and we do know R2 was around, so it's not outside the realm of possibility that it could have, you know, come across each other during that time. But
I thought that was a great touch to have Grogu cling to Mando's leg, like, yeah, I don't really want to go.
Right, until he sees R2, and then it's like, oh, ooh, shiny.
Well, yeah, that's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is, oh, he's rolling with R2, who I recognize.
Right.
You
yeah,
know?
But again, we don't, like I said, we don't know if that is the case.
Yeah, we don't know that for sure. So,
because as we know, but the thing we do know about Grogu is like he likes the shiny things. Like every time, you know, he takes the stick from the wheel of the Razor Crest, or that he took it. Which I actually halfway expected that to happen, actually, because I felt like. Yeah, the little ball, the little gear shift ball. I half expected Mando to give Grogu that as was like, here you go, kid, here's that, because he did take it from the wreckage of the Razor Crest, so we saw that a couple of episodes back. Regardless, so we can go ahead and get
season where he's gonna be like looking wistfully at it. You know, that's like his one keepsake.
But yeah, and also Mando did say, like, I'll see you again, kid, I promise. You know, before he puts him down on the ground, and you know that whole interaction with R2 happens. So after this, just to kind of bring this on home, Grogu kind of bops over to Luke and is like, pick me up, which he does, and they just walk out. You see the slow walk.
They do a little bit of Force thought sensing.
Right. Well, yeah, because it's been established that Grogu can talk through the Force, and obviously Luke, being powerful in the Force, would be able to pick up on this. So yes.
So they definitely do have a little bit of an exchange before they walk out. They have that kind of little thought exchange before Luke wishes, may the Force be with you on everyone, and turns to leave.
Right. So, so Luke, and obviously music swells, and it's a touching moment and you can see Mando just kind of looking. Like I don't want him to go, but we're gonna you can kind of see him kind of well up, and that's where it's definitely ends up being a touching moment as you see Luke, Grogu, and R2 head back towards the elevator and leave.
Right.
In the final shot we see of that is the elevator door closes as Grogu and Mando looks at each other.
Right. So there's a couple of scenes there that that capture what the rest of the characters look like and what they're doing. You get to see, the other Mandalorians in the, spaced out, and Fennec Shand spaced out on the bridge, just kind of looking. They're all holding their weapons down now.
Right.
They're not holding the weapons up; they're holding the weapons down, and they're just watching this whole transaction, this whole interaction take place. And the one person that they actually zoom in on, other than Mando, right? They don't zoom in on Fennec Shand. They don't zoom in on Bo-Katan or Costco Reeves. They zoom in on Cara Dune, right? Cara Dune kind of has this like smiling smirk on her face. And I noticed this, and I'm glad that you mentioned that Luke doesn't even introduce himself. He doesn't say, "I'm Luke Skywalker."
Right.
But it seems Cara Dune knows who he is, since she is obviously a former rebel trooper. To me, it makes sense that she would know the face of, or at least the likeness of, one of the main heroes of the rebellion.
Right.
Like, it would be plastered on screens or posters all over the place. So you would think that she of this group would recognize General Skywalker.
Right. But we get none of that, but yeah.
Right, and I wonder if that's going to come up in the next season. Be like, oh, that was Luke Skywalker. She's going to come out and say, that was Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, probably not. I feel like there's like, no, they're just going to let that sit to the way it is. Maybe Will and I could very well be wrong, but who even knows at this point?
Right. But that's conjecture at this point from my end.
Exactly.
On what's going to happen in the next season.
However, what we do know what's going to happen comes in the form of, because that is pretty much the end of the episode, with the exception of a post-credit scene that we end up getting, having to do with not the Moff Gideon stuff, not the Bo-Katan stuff, which, by the way, I had to go back. This is the reason why I had to go back and watch the scene, the couple of scenes prior to this, because when Moff Gideon takes pot shots at Bo-Katan, when I was immediately watching the first time, I was like, we don't see her again. So I was like, well, is she dead? No one does anything to kind of, no one does anything to see about her or see if she's all right, or whether the Beskar saved her. But on second viewing, I actually paid a little more attention, and you see her standing there with everybody else at the, when Luke comes in and whatnot, because you kind of see her even hobbling, kind of getting herself together in the background as like Mando and Grogu is looking at the screen. So so that part was what it is. But you still don't really get to the part where it was like, okay, well, so this whole Darksaber, Moff Gideon stuff gets taken care of or anything, which I guess is going to lead into next season, like 87 said earlier.
Absolutely.
But
I think that's well. I was about to say, talk about the post credit, then we'll talk about what's next for like President Bartlett would ask, what's next for the show.
Right. So post credit scene, we go back to a familiar palace on Tatooine, formerly resided by one Jabba the Hutt, and we see somewhat of a similar scene to one that was in the beginning of Return of the Jedi, when, except for the fact that Bib Fortuna, Jabba's former right hand, is the one kind of presiding over things. Looking a little bit thicker, you know, he's gained a little bit of weight, you know, in the however long it's been since Return of the Jedi.
It's an effect of being in the chair of power in the Hutt Palace.
Exactly. So he's sitting there, and you see, you know, they cut to the door where you hear blaster shots, and you see, you know, again, like in Return of the Jedi fashion, a figure comes tumbling down the stairs after being shot, and a couple of other people get shot, and then you see the shadow of a figure who we've seen earlier in the issue, in this episode, and that was of one Fennec Shan. But then after that, we see another figure shadowy figure comes in the form of Boba Fett, who pretty much exactly. And I'm sitting here like, oh wait, I know what this is about, because obviously if you've seen, you know, Return of the Jedi, which at first I was like, well, we'll get to that in a second. So Bib Fortuna's like, Boba, hey, I heard rumors about what happened to you. Now, again, if you know about what happened in the midst of, at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, you know, Boba got knocked into the Sarlacc pit, never to be seen again up until, well, you know, now, or the novel that, you know, the EU novel that he may or may not have escaped from that could possibly be canon. We still don't know how he escaped, but, you know, maybe we'll get that next season in what this is setting up. So, you know, Bib pretty much says, hey, I heard rumors about you and this and that. Boba shoots him, knocks him off the chair, and then he and Fennec kind of take the seat. Well, he takes the seat, and Fennec's like just grabs a beer, sits beside him, and just you know, smiles, setting up a new show that is coming up next year called The Book of Boba. And they even get like the title of it at the end of this thing, because basically just cuts the black screen and says coming December 2021, The Book of Boba.
Oh no, it's not The Book of Boba, it's The Book of Boba Fett. We're not talking about Bubble. So it's The Book of Boba Fett.
Sure.
Folks.
But regardless, exactly. But you get me though. So, and that's when, you know, the rest of the credit comes out and scene for The Mandalorian season 2.
Right. So, just real quick on the post-credit scene, it's great to see Fennec Shand become part of the Book of Boba Fett show.
Mm-hmm. As we come to find out.
This character has quickly become an important part of this generation of Star Wars stories, and you know, good for Ming-Na Wen. So.
Yes, exactly. Always great to see her kicking ass wherever she goes.
And look at that, Bib Fortuna comes back just to get killed. Gotta love it.
Right. So, which brings me to this part about that, because if you see my virtual background behind me, it is but Jabba's palace. So, you know, that's one thing. But anyway, obviously, due to the events of Return of the Jedi, I had myself thinking like, well, wait, it wasn't Jabba's fault or Bib Fortuna's fault about what happened to Jabba at the time. I mean, what happened to Boba Fett at the time, because realistically, he just got knocked in by a lucky swoop by Han, who was blind at the time. So it wasn't really his fault. But at the same time, I get it, because it's like, well, y'all, no one tried to save me. No one tried to, you know, put a rope, send a rope down to help me out or something like that. You know, exactly.
Kill the Sarlacc so I could get out. You know,
right. So I was like, damn, no one even cares. So I kind of get, you know, but also it was like, so clearly this is setting up that, okay, Boba Fett's got just taking over the Jabba's old spot, and which is going to go into, and I guess in a lengthy kind of arc stemming from Clone Wars also, because we see little Boba kind of trying to make his way through the Clone Wars and trying to, you know, figure out his place in the world and getting to where we know he is, and even after that. I still wasn't expecting it to come to this, but I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with this. That being said, you know, like what is he going to get into now that he's got this?
Mm-hmm.
But that is for a year from now.
Right.
So I guess thoughts on the this episode and the season in general.
Right.
Real
So
quick.
I mean, as I said, you know, on this episode, and essentially on the season, I've already stated my thoughts. You know, no need to restate the whole thing, but
Right.
in sum, this is what I always wanted to watch after Return of the Jedi. This is what I always wanted. You know, this like really, you know, it didn't have to be right after, but it had to be in that, you know, in that time period where I wanted to follow up on Luke Skywalker's story.
Sure.
You know, and I know that people say, you know, people will say it's in the novels. Read the novels. No, I want to see it on screen.
Well,
No.
I mean, I don't know if there's any. Well, there might be current novels that might be the case, but like a lot of the old EU novels are not really canon anymore. So yeah, they're good reads, but they're not necessarily canon.
But I'm thinking about, you know, like as we grew up and matured from the age we were when Jedi came out.
Sure.
Right. In order to locate what was then canon stories that follow in the footsteps of Return of the Jedi, you essentially are looking for the novels, and a few years later the Dark Horse comics.
Right.
So, you know, if you're not tracking that down, you're just kind of lost, and you know, you just know that's just kind of the last of where that story ended. So seeing this now really does, and this is the reaction I heard, you know, on podcasts, on social media.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shout out to my fellow binge moders. A lot of the people in binge mode had the same reaction that I did, which is this is what I always wanted, and I'm so happy to see it and to get it.
Right. So yeah. I mean, yeah. Just quickly, yeah. Season was good. Like I said, just like I kind of said earlier, this episode felt like it kind of took a turn from where we were to where they got to at the end of it, especially, you know, because it's just like, you see the X-Wing and it's like, okay, hold on, we're gonna stop here and just take care of the rest of this, and then take care of the whole baby, you know, Grogu thing, which also lends itself saying like, okay, well, what's and I think there's been an article saying this, like, what's season 3 of The Mandalorian going to be like now that this is not the way it is anymore?
Right. There isn't that central relationship at its core, and I think that's going to be tough for some of the fans that relied on that.
Right.
But at the same time, much like Roddykat mentioned, Mando does say, "I'll see you again." So I don't think it's the end of Baby Grogu's relationship with Mando. It's not his last appearance on this show, but I think where this is going is trying to retake Mandalore.
Exactly.
Trying to establish Mandalore. And what I think really does need to happen, even though this season was very heavy on introducing subplots and characters that are direct takes from the canon animated series now, namely Bo-Katan and Ahsoka. The last person we need to pull, or the next person we need to pull, not the last, but the next person we need to pull from Rebels era at the very least is Sabine Wren, because obviously this has, this weaves integrally into the Mandalorian and the Mandalore story. So,
right, and there was rumors saying that she could possibly have shown up this particular season, rumor wise anyway.
Okay, I mean, but speaking to this character appearing in this show, I honestly, I think I would raise all sorts of Twitter hell. I don't know what other hell I could raise if they don't cast Tia Sircar.
I was going to say the exact same thing. Exactly.
Because she is still, she seems young, but she's still roughly the right age.
Well, and then there will be makeup and the wig and whatever else they do to her. But yeah, right. Totally.
And even the skin tone, they always depict Sabine as having a darker skin tone. So there's no need to recast. They should just put Tia Sircar into like she's fit, but she could probably use some extra combat training to get into the role, or some like whatchamacallit, some physical training, just a little bit.
And I'm sure they
just
would,
right, but just to prepare for like like stunt work and whatnot.
Right.
But could definitely slide right into that role because it's her voice.
Right. But at the same time, though, this would go back to the Ahsoka thing. It was like, well, wait, now you got, but so you mean tell me, not only do you have Bo-Katan playing herself, do the voice, now you got the voice of, the voice of Sabine playing herself, but y'all couldn't let Ashley Eckstein do Ahsoka. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to say that. And
I would say yes, because to a certain extent, Bo-Katan, well, obviously Bo-Katan's not an argument. That's not a fair argument, because they literally based the character, rendition in the cartoon on her.
I mean, sure, but still, but it still kind of applies though, to a point.
No, but my point being is I think arguably also based the Sabine rendition on Tia Sircar's face as well. So
we don't know that, but yeah, I can see that also. Yeah,
I would say that it's an argument you can make, but it's not a fair argument, because at the end of the day, if we're going on looks, I think the Rosario Dawson casting was 100% on point.
Oh, you will get no disagreement here.
Right, it does suck for Ashley Eckstein, but at the end of the day, I think they went in when they made the decision to go for the complete look. I think they made the correct call.
Right, and there were other reasons which we've mentioned in past shows about why a potential reason why they could have gone that route, which we don't really need to rehash here. But yeah, so we'll find out whether any of that plays into what's going on in season 3 of The Mandalorian whenever that happens, because we still don't have a date or anything for that. We just know that Book of Boba is going to happen. It's going to be around the same time frame as this is being said. So
they're going to be like either consecutive or concurrent. Probably consecutive. They don't want to step on each other's toes. Right. But essentially what we're figuring is that the next story in season 3 of The Mandalorian is going to be a Mandalore story, and it's going to continue Bo-Katan's story, because she does say to Mando that once his quest is over to regain custody of the child and to make sure the child gets to its kind, which essentially has happened. He's actually completed his quest.
Yeah.
I guess what's left is to, join Bo-Katan, but with the added complication of Mando being right now the quote unquote rightful possessor, wielder of the Darksaber.
Right, which I'm sure that will be addressed at some point.
Right.
It has to, because I'll be real upset if they don't.
No, I think it's most assuredly going to go in that direction.
So, but like I said, as of this moment, we don't know that, and that is that. And unless you got any other parting thoughts, we can kind of move on to the rest of the show, because we do have a little bit to get to.
What's next?
So we're now going to talk about. This is still spoiler, by the way.
Spoiler bell.
I'm going to go ahead and say that we don't necessarily have to talk a whole lot about this because it's still fresh, and the fact that. Yeah, and the fact that, granted, I'm still processing, but I feel like I have my thoughts in order about this. But being that it's still fresh and just came out, we're going to talk about Wonder Woman 84, kind of briefly, and our thoughts on that, which just got released in theaters and on HBO Max on Christmas Day. So I am just going to go ahead and put this out there. It say that, how that thing with the trailers where you see most of the action in the trailer, and which kind of takes away from the movie a little bit. Yeah, this kind of sort of does that. But I would just go ahead and give my initial impressions of it. Like, I don't all of the the dunking on it, as it were, that's been going on social media, I don't necessarily think it's worthy of it, because I'm not going to sit here and say it's a perfect movie, and I'm also going to say that I watched what the first Wonder Woman and this back to back, and you can tell the similarities and the differences in the movies. You know, whether your knowledge of the first one is that good or not, or whatever, but you can kind of see where there's some similarities to kind of take place between the both. But that said, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's pretty lengthy. It's probably longer than it needs to be, and there's probably some things I can nitpick about it, and probably will in the next couple of minutes. But overall, it's not a terrible movie. You know, there are some choices that was made in it.
Yeah, that's Roddykat's somewhat generous review of Wonder Woman 84. Now we get the Agent_70's slightly more biting review of Wonder Woman 84. So, in my most generous take on this, I thought it was an uneven and overly long movie. So we're in agreement on that. It's kind of got a script and story though, and I just did not appreciate where a lot of the story points went. I did appreciate a lot of the 1984 specific period references and plot points, but I just did not enjoy my time watching this movie. I definitely told Roddykat that I struggled my way through this. Maybe it's the result of having a remote control in my hand. I literally pressed pause or turned it off a couple of times because I was struggling to finish watching it. And I hate to say this, I know lots of people, you know, obviously this is just anecdotal. I know lots of people, both binge mode and personal friends, you know, that relayed this to me. So I'm not the only one. So this definitely is an opinion that's not just held by a distinct minority of fans.
Yeah, but also a lot of it, and I'm not saying in your case, because like I said, you have anecdotal evidence of this, and I could point to anecdotal evidence online of people liking it also, but also, but also like the first Wonder Woman, people had their issues with it also, and also pretty much had issues because of X, Y, and Z stupidity. This one, I still think that this one kind of has some of that on top of it, because those people are going to be those people. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say that some of the criticisms that have been levied towards the movie is not unwarranted. Like we just said, it was a little long. The plot was a little thin. There were some choices made here and there, but also you can kind of say some of that about other comic book movies in the past.
Right, but I was pretty disappointed in watching this movie, and I appreciated the first movie. All the weaknesses and all, and the awful third act. I really appreciated the first movie for what it was able to accomplish. Right. With regards to this movie, the opening sequence that was leaked online, for everyone to watch, my understanding is that it was the Amazonian Ninja Warrior sequence,
which you've seen in trailers. So I've been seeing bits of in trailers.
Right. I think the only thing that bothered me was everyone's attempt at trying to mimic Gal Gadot's accent. It just bugged me. Like, I don't know what it was about Robin Wright and some of the other actresses. It just bothered me again. I don't know what it was. Like, it bothered me a little bit in the first movie, but more so in this one. I don't know if they were trying to refine it.
I really didn't pay attention to that until much later on in this movie.
It started to me.
Right.
It started from really early.
Right, and there was a particular point where I think we will get to, because I forgot to ask you if you've actually seen it, which I'm pretty sure you had. But yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
So, I'm just going very broad strokes here, not going not doing like a synopsis, because like I said, like we mentioned earlier, we're not trying to spoil it so heavily, because the movie's still so fresh and people still may not have made time to watch it, even though they literally had a holiday weekend and a holiday day off and a holiday to do it.
People got other things doing. So, but anyway.
Exactly. You know, not all of us were taking the risk to go see family members outside of our homes, right?
Exactly.
So, I honestly enjoy my favorite part of the movie was the mid-credit scene.
That's what I was about to get to. Yes.
That made me sit up and clap like an idiot. The same way I clapped for Luke Skywalker and R2 at the end of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
I also had forgotten in this movie that there was a certain aspect of Wonder Woman's power set that wasn't really explored in the first movie and became a major plot point in this movie. And it emphasized that one of the characters, and it's not really a spoiler to say that Steve Trevor does make an appearance in this movie somehow, right? I'm not going to spoil how, but he does make an appearance somehow,
which
and
was
it's as a
also
result
weird
of his intervention,
right,
that causes this power that I guess had been significantly missing in the first movie to really be developed in this movie. I in reading some of the post kind of the post fight analysis of this movie, I noticed that Patty Jenkins says that the goal of Pedro Pascal's Maxwell Lord arc was to examine his version of the American dream. So that's something to kind of, if you haven't watched it yet, keep that in mind. But if you have watched it, maybe you'll go back. If you've got a big cup of coffee or a big cup of tea and you can make it through, just watch it with a little understanding.
But that part though, going on that part though, like, yeah, they kind of put that out there kind of front and center with him. Like, if you, I don't know what the age would have to be to where you would not understand what they were going for with that, but I know there is that.
Right, but there's really more, but it's really more front and center when you go through when you see that at the end, right? When you don't necessarily realize that he's coming from at least in this story, an immigrant background. So another goal that Patty Jenkins has stated in interviews in the post-fight analysis, that she kind of wanted to have a subversion of the superhero movie at the end, or at least throughout, where and this is, again, we've already rang the spoiler bell, nobody dies, the hero wins in the end with a conversation, and you have to find the hero within. That's fine, but the movie needs to be better to actually keep people to allow people to appreciate that, where I think a couple of edits and maybe some better choreographed or better pulled off fight scenes. There's a couple of instances where it seemed like characters were floating when they shouldn't have been.
There was that whole the whole rope thing. You know what I'm talking about, in the one fight where it was like, are they doing like Cirque du Soleil or what's going on here? Yeah.
It's like, wait, is she Spidey this time? What's going on here?
Right.
Oh, wait, this is Spidey in Infinity War, right? Where Spidey's just like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I'm sorry, I forgot that. That's earned. You know why that's earned? It's because we know what's happening, and we know why he has to make those types of moves. Kind of like what Roddykat mentioned, at least in my opinion, the action set pieces just felt a little off. Just off. I don't know why they did that for me. I don't know how you felt about them.
I mean, the action was what it was. Like, they pretty much give you like, here's the stuff that people liked about the first movie, like the action sequences in the first movie. We're just gonna give a little bit modern take of that, which superhero movies or even DC movies of late hadn't pretty much have been doing. It's like, oh, you like this kind of stuff, so here we go. We'll throw a little bit more of that in there. So that being said, the action scenes, they were pretty much paces as they had been in, like when you've seen her, with the exception of that last part of the, a part that we just kind of briefly mentioned. We won't go into. They tried to extend the fight scenes a little bit more with some stuff that seemed kind of weird and out of place, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe not be, because who knows? I don't know what they're doing in the recent comics. I know Maxwell Lord is a part of it, but that's a whole nother situation.
Right. I would ask, what do you think are the strong? What do you think is the strongest part or parts of the movie?
As much as I hate to say it, the stuff that was seen in the trailers, that's the action pieces, and that one part where you see, and this is from this trailer, so where there's kind of the reversal, some would say, from the first movie, where Steve Trevor's pretty much trying to get Diana outfitted, to get her to blend in. And
Right.
Diana's doing the same thing to Steve in this one, but it's just a little bit more lengthy.
Sure.
I will say here, there were some weird cuts in that scene that I don't know who was doing the editing right there. Probably, I don't know. That was some weird choices to make cuts or the cuts they made on that one. And there was also, it was also kind of touching about the one part where the resolution of the Steve Trevor thing.
Right.
Was also good, but also,
right. You know what's
touching?
We agree in a broad sense, because I said that the strongest parts of the movie were when Gal Gadot and Chris Pine were together on screen and they were interacting with each other, and that's exactly what you said. So we have those instances where they're interacting with each other, but then the rest of the movie it doesn't fall flat. In my opinion, it just falls. So that's where I had a lot of problems with where a lot of the movie went. The one issue I had with Diana, which I think is the Captain America problem, if he were not frozen in ice.
Yeah, there's some of that.
I'll put it
kind of
to
a person
you
out of time.
Well, not necessarily that, but someone who has been around but not making as big a difference as they could have.
Right.
Because they were around. They weren't frozen in ice. They don't have an excuse. And I think that's something that I kind of struggle with, because this is a character who has been in the DC extended universe now for 70 years. And what does she have to show for it? Right. Other than sort of earning this kind of world weary sense of sense that we get from her. We kind of get that, but we don't see how she earned that. Like how has she earned that she's a little bit more cynical now than she was when she was like kind of like a rookie superhero in Wonder Woman in the first movie. We don't get like a montage of, I tried to do this, but it still didn't help. I tried to do this, it still didn't help. All we get is where she is in 1984, working a pretty good job and doing, and stopping robberies. I'm like, this is Wonder Woman.
Yeah, but she's trying to keep a low profile, but still doing her hero stuff at the same time. Yeah, and I guess on that note, there was the whole thing, because I know going back to like what was it, either Batman v Supes or Justice League, one of the two, where it kind of comes up, it was like where it comes up where it's like, where this is being said, like, she kind of kept a low profile and wasn't really trying to mess with the world. And I guess this movie was supposed to go into, because this was written by Zack Snyder also, by the way, go into talking about why she was like that. I guess if you put all that together, you can kind of assume that that's what it was. But yeah, I kind of agree that it doesn't necessarily do enough to do that. Like, you get it from one part.
Yeah, to quote Uncle Roger on YouTube, so weak, because you give Steve Rogers the benefit of the doubt because he was in the ice.
Yeah.
What do you do with Wonder Woman in this case?
But a part of it is like, I kind of get, like I said, after the events of the first movie, and she lost the love of her life and this and that other, even though that whole thing seemed like that kind of got brought on relatively quick, even during the course of that movie. So she kind of kept a low profile because, like, she wasn't she was disillusioned with the world. Like, this is the kind of stuff you kind of got to put together yourself in a way, in addition to the events of this movie.
Right. That's the worst part. If she retreated to Themyscira, I'd understand.
Which she wasn't able to, because you remember in the first movie, she's like, "You can't come back here anymore."
Right, but if they had been able to reverse that,
right,
then you would understand.
Right.
If they had been able to reverse that, say we take you back, because of all this other, because of all this stuff that happened to you, I would understand why she was off the radar, off the grid, essentially, in reality, for all of these years. But
right.
I'll let that one go.
Yeah.
I know that people are going to bring that up. People are going to wonder why. The way I posited it, the way I think about it is that she doesn't earn her world weariness. Like, she's been around for 70 years. Like, she doesn't earn that she's, just kind of like tired of it all.
Yeah.
I just don't get it.
Yeah, she's just kind of settled in and was like, okay, I'm here now and I'm doing the thing, and nobody. Right. Well, I suspect, like, wait, I don't know. Maybe she moved from place to place, but it seemed like she might have been in the same place the whole time. But it was like no one noticed that this one woman, depending on how long she's been in this place or whatever place, like no one noticed that she hasn't aged in. Assuming that's ever coming, because there's reasons why that wouldn't. I guess that would not come up though. So I'm not. So don't at me or anything. Like, there's a reason why that wouldn't. There would be no reason for that to come up.
Oh, but, people can do math. Especially depending on when she establishes an identity, but
right, and that's the other thing. So when she establishes an ID, so
exactly, we're not gonna quibble too hard with that.
Yeah, no.
So,
like I said, there's nitpicky things that you can kind of get out, pick off of this, and they're not all worth it.
I'm trying to stay broad stroke without revealing too many plot points, because, like we said, we're not trying to spoil everything.
Well, it's really not much of a plot to
God, that's awful.
I mean, to be fair, there is a plot, and it's it is what it is.
Plot does revolve, right. Part of the plot does revolve around Diana's profession.
Right.
She work at the Smithsonian, and one of her colleagues turns out to be Barbara Minerva, played by Kristen Wiig, and they kind of play her off as whatchamacallit, like the subject of a She's All That movie. Or
kind of,
or she kind of gets a makeover in this movie, in a sense, and that kind of bothered me.
Yeah, they definitely changed Cheetah's origin.
Yeah,
also.
Yeah, they kind of made Cheetah's origin into like a She's All That type of thing. Like, I can change, you into the cool, attractive girl, and now she wants to be, she doesn't want to be picked on anymore. So. That's the crux of the origin, without touching on all the specifics. But right. I honestly didn't appreciate that, and I also didn't appreciate that they kept the cheetah scenes to a dark scene at the very end. I was like, oh really? That's what you're gonna do to us now?
Right, and apparently they kind of the character. Well, they deal with it in a way that's like, okay, clearly. If they were going to revisit that character during the course of this, like I guess I kind of get it within the realm of how the plot goes and the resolution of the plot's going is, but it still didn't make a whole lot of sense for her, for her character. But I suppose if they revisit it, they'll go another way with, if they're going to go back with it, if they ever do go back with it,
Right.
And also, I think I was going to say something about the whole Themyscira, Diana being exiled from Themyscira. If they do get a third movie, I suspect that. I feel like that's probably a thing they'll handle there.
Right. I mean, I didn't watch the first movie again the way you did. Well, the way you did in preparation for watching this movie. So I did forget that plot point, and I did forget the whole other part of her power set plot point.
Right.
I forgot about all that. I had to kind of read up on that, be like, oh, okay, that's that's why that's there, and I sort of understand.
Right. They kind of and they've kind of extended that one in this. Well, not extended, but obviously comic fans and animated or otherwise kind of know enough about her power set to know that some of that stuff kind of shows up in reasonable fashion, I guess. One kind of weirdly though. The one main one's kind of weirdly.
Oh, I mean, there's definitely one weird one. Like, oh, we have an invisible jet now. How do we have an invisible
Well,
jet now?
that was just that was just that was just that's like, hey, here's a reference to a thing that people might know about.
Right. But she pulled a Mr. Miyagi. She went like this, and all of a sudden the jet was invisible.
And the way they explained it is like, well, wait, you don't know too much about that. Oh, I mean, granted, you had time to study. I get it, but it's like, how do you know when you just really found out? Well, not just really found out. When at some point at the end of the last you at the end of the last after the last movie, sure, you found out the thing that kind of made that being the case, and knowing who she kind of is from that, But yeah, even that was like, okay, I guess that's the way to do it and to get that reference in there. But at the same time, I'm like,
Like, what?
Like she had time to study and she had time to for that to be actually the case, but it still seemed kind of weird. I was like, all right, you just wanted to get the invisible jet here, and I appreciate it. I very much appreciated that part.
So, honestly, in my wrap on this, it sucks that I had to read several articles before I could figure out how some of the big themes that Patty Jenkins and Gal Gadot were trying to put across and how they connected to each other in the movie. Like I got the whatchamacallit, the American Dream thing, but I didn't necessarily pull it all together until I saw until the resolution of the movie.
Right.
Where he's going through, where Maxwell Lord is going through his life, like basically seeing his life flash before his eyes. Right. And I felt like the movie makes more, and this is something that I read and I heard and I found myself in complete agreement with, which is the movie makes more emotional sense than it does logical sense or even any other sort of storytelling sense. It makes the increase, in my opinion, it makes the increasing number of negative reviews make sense because, at least in my opinion, the movie was kind of a tough watch because I had a tough time, having the emotional sense, where I agreed, where I understood where this movie was going, make, like kind of strike some sort of balance with the crazy, thin, illogical storytelling on the other side.
Right. So I differ from that because I'm like, I see what she was trying to do, and she was definitely tapping on the emotion button a few different times, or maybe a couple times slightly heavy-handedly. But I see what she was doing, and she was trying to make a different superhero. And realistically, I applaud the effort, honestly, because like it shouldn't be as like, hey, get into this fight, get into this other fight, get into this other fight, villain this, villain that, kill the villain. That type of shit. Like that's boring too. Like we've seen enough of that. She tried to do something a little different. It didn't necessarily go off 100%. Or maybe it went off 100% the way she wanted it to, or way they wanted it to. And again, she directed it. She did with what she had to, and whatever input she had with it. On the cinematic side, the story was written by other people, that being Zack Snyder, and whoever else. So you can't really blame her for the. I would hope you can't really blame her, more for the plot than the people who actually wrote the story. And again, she probably had some input, I'm sure, but still, you can't really put all that all on her. The way it was shot and cinematically, and the way that it went. Sure, you can put some of that on, most of that on her, but that being said, yeah, I generally like the movie. Like I said earlier, I'm not gonna sit here and say it's the best movie. It's not a perfect movie. It's. I did not have the time Agent 70 did getting through the movie, but I try to put my best effort into trying to, and he did too. So I'm not saying he didn't, but put the effort into trying to get through it in one time. And I didn't really have a problem getting through it. It was just like, yeah, there were times it was like, you could have kind of cut here, there was some stuff like, yeah, that probably didn't necessarily need it.
why? Yeah, you know.
Yeah. The whole Maxwell Lord thing, like, and granted, my whole thing with Maxwell Lord from DC, my DC knowledge is kind of lacking, but the couple of points that I know of from the Max Lord part is he killed the Blue Beetle and Wonder Woman killed him, and he's basically like Obadiah Stane and not necessarily Lex Luthor. That being like, sure, he's he's kind of a greedy, smart, ambitious, businessman, but he's not like a super genius. And some of that, I guess, kind of plays out here, but you don't necessarily like. They spend a good bit of time. No, I don't say they humanized him, but at the end they definitely tried to. They definitely did do that at the end. Like going into it, he was like, here's this dude, he's this and that and other. So I can't really say that they tried to make him like the comic books because, like I said, there's the two notes that I know of are pretty much the two notes that I know of. And I know he's in the current run of the Wonder Woman comic now, so that's obvious because of the movie. But again, shout out to Pedro Pascal because he, like I said, seeing his portrayal of the Mandalorian here with two different characters, mind you, to going towards this where he's like all expressive and doing this thing. I'm like, you know what, he did a part quite well. I'm not sitting here saying that it's Maxwell Lord because I don't know the character all that well, but for him playing the character that he played, he was supposed to be that character. Like, yeah, he kind of did a thing for the most part. Gal Gadot also did her thing, but I don't know. But she's been doing this a second. Also, there was the only other nitpick I would probably have, and I'll probably leave that as the last thing, so we can kind of move on. Is that there was a couple of times, especially during the fight scene, with that seemed like that wasn't even Gal Gadot, and I don't know if it was, huh?
You mean obviously so?
Yeah, I mean, but it was like close up for her. It wasn't like during an action scene. It was just like, hey, she's talking to somebody, or she's like in the, wherever she was at the time. It totally didn't look like it was her.
Gotcha.
Like I'm like that seems kind of weird. Like, okay, that's her voice seeming like, and that seems like that's her, but it doesn't exactly. It looks like it's almost like they was like, here's the stunt person. They just let some from have some screen time in here.
I did read something that said that Gal Gadot took in the world premiere of the movie in the hospital because she was having some back surgery.
Right.
Because she had gotten some back and shoulder or neck injuries during the filming of Wonder Woman 1 and 2 and hadn't had a chance to correct it. So she waited until Wonder Woman 2 to correct it or after it. So I did read somewhere that some of the scenes where you see her standing is because she can't sit. So that might be a reason for this particular scene.
No, because one of the scenes
I'm not sure.
One of the scenes was she was definitely sitting, or she was definitely supposed to be sitting. So maybe that's probably. I guess that still plays into what you just said, though.
Exactly, that's the point. Like she can't sit, so they probably filmed somebody else doing that.
Right.
So. Gotcha.
But also one of them was standing, so that shouldn't that kind of one of them was sitting, one of them was standing. So, but either way, it is what it is on that one.
Right.
So the last thing I guess we would talk about, which we kind of talked about already, we won't spoil this, but there is a post-credit scene.
Yes. I clapped like an idiot.
I did too, but I feel like people are making it out to be, well, and it was like people are making it out to be like this big surprise, and I'm kind of surprised I hadn't heard more people talking about this, honestly. But we get a post-credit scene, but this one kind of felt kind of obvious though. And maybe it was probably because I was expecting it, or I expected. Actually, what I expected was something like what happened in the post-credit scene with this person was going to be more in the movie. Like, yeah, there's a reference to the character that shows up in the post-credit scene,
right?
And I guess we'll go ahead and spoil it. We are going to spoil this one. So there's a reference to a character. Yeah, so spoiler alert. There's a reference to a character during the course of the movie talking about the history of covers a history of this, a little bit of backstory on this character, and basically how she gets that golden armor that you see in the trailer. So that's not a spoiler there, but and this person is supposedly dead, but apparently, depending on when this time frame is, which I
say that she's dead.
Huh? No. Well,
because
yeah,
what Diana
you're right.
says is that she searched for this character, and all she found was the armor.
Right, but it was implied. It was implied from that, or at least that's how some people are taking. Let's put it this way: some people online are taking it as she said, and yes, I agree with you with that because yes, she basically just says like, "Hey, she finds the armor but didn't find this person." So they're not saying that she was dead, but there was some implication of maybe blah 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 blah. But we see this character shows up at the end, so we see like a street festival scene, something or the other, and we see the back of this character who you could kind of say was Diana. If you at first blush, you're not really paying close attention, is Diana because of there's this whole blue thing ensemble she's got on in the hair or whatever, and just walking away from the camera, and some earthquake or whatever happens, and this character saves basically saves another character's baby from being crushed by a telephone pole or whatever the case may be. And the mom comes over and just like, "Hey, I want to thank you for saving my kid. And how'd you do that?" And she turns around, and we get one Wonder Woman. Linda Carter shows up as the character of Asteria, who is being referenced earlier in the movie. And even which part of this was going back to what I was saying about the accent thing. She kind of also does the little accent thing because she was like, "Yeah, this is from my culture," and you kind of hear that she's trying to do a little bit of an accent, which is Linda Carter. We don't, sure, it is what it is on that one. But also there is an actual wink and a nod to the character about, yeah, she's done this a lot before, basically, because she was the original Wonder Woman, so. Right. That part right there was like, okay, I clapped like a fool, but also groaned a little bit. It was like, all right, that was a little bit too much of a wink and a nod, like an actual wink and a nod. So like, yeah, we got it. You didn't necessarily have to do that, but you're Linda Carter, you could do that, and I won't be mad at it.
Shout out to Linda Carter. We don't objectify women here, but she can still get it. Goodness gracious.
So, and I've seen it pointed out online. It was like, yeah, they didn't do an alternate version of, granted she is, she has played the Wonder Woman. They didn't portray her as an alternate, version of Wonder Woman, but kind of was, with that. So I'm kind of wondering if there is a third movie where they bring her back, or, hope, she stays in good health and all that kind of goodness, and, because she does still look really good. That they'll maybe bring her back for something else, for a little bit more in the third movie if there is one. But it was all in all, it was a pretty good post credit scene. Like I said, I kind of expected Linda Carter to have shown up during the course of the movie as opposed to that post credit scene. Because why would you not have her, that happen if you got her and able to do it and she's wanting to. But that was a nice touch.
Alrighty. Okay. So I think we can wrap our discussion of The Mandalorian and Wonder Woman 84 here. Let me get this first ad in, and then I think we're going to run through comic reviews and run through the news.
Bet.
Our first ad of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to Cabernet to Torrontés, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your taste and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink Wines through CSPN. Do it today. we transition into our comic book reviews.
Absolutely. And whoops, we are going to start off with, as we said before the show, Amazing Spider-Man 54 LR. So this is a last rights sides thing, which again could have been very much just a regular issue. But there's not really, well, actually I know you want to do the whole the creative team thing, so go ahead and do that real quick.
Yeah, I'll just knock it out. It's written by Nick Spencer and Matthew Rosenberg, with art by Federico Vicentini and Takeshi Miyazawa and Scott Hanna, and colors by Eric Arciniega.
Cool. Thank you. The only thing I'm going to say about this, and I'm just going to go off my notes on it, is like, you know, the ending of this issue would have had more weight if articles based off the Solicitations didn't spoil it. But also that is just a you know, kind of, hey, being in our position and having to look at, or possibly needing to look at new stuff. So that's neither here nor there on that. You know, other people won't have that issue, I don't think.
When did you read it?
Wait, read this issue?
Yeah,
earlier today.
Oh, okay. So you read it after you probably saw the news articles.
Right.
Right. I read this Wednesday evening, so I missed out on getting spoiled.
And I think that's when I saw the article. I saw the article in question.
Wednesday night?
Yeah. It was either Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday night, Wednesday afternoon. One of them two, I can't remember.
Right. So I was fortunate enough to miss that particular spoiling of where this might be going. But it was jarring to see the Sal Buscema art at the beginning of the book, which was an excerpt from Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man number 200,
right, that
showed Harry Osborn as the Green Goblin trying to assure Mary Jane that she was safe, despite him trying to kill Spidey.
Right, which actually sounds like that's not going to be the case if they're bringing that up, because I feel like they didn't bring that up for no reason.
Right. But it was just like, wow, really? So, so, you know, just in short, brief strokes, Norman sending in MJ to confront Kindred, something bad happens to Madam Web as a result of dealing with the Sin Eater, but this may have caused the Sin Eater to see things for what they really are.
That was calculated, and she's fine, but yeah.
Exactly, because of the nature of the Sin Eater's current abilities. And we see that Norman is in cahoots with another longtime Spidey villain. That's at the end of the book. Right.
Which, again, if you hadn't been, you know, been kind of spoiled on time, and actually I think that article might have been even before this week proper, now that I think about it, but I might have it in the show notes. But regardless, so yeah, that still would have seemed like it's kind of out of place to me, because like, why? Like, I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, we're going to definitely get into this character's, you know, what this character is getting out of this, basically, you know, outside of what was mentioned at the end of this. So, and there's definitely more things to come on that respect. But it had me kind of thinking, I was like, well, why you're involved? This is now, you know, it's not saying you would have never been, but it's like, why are you in this now? But again, we'll find that out. That being said, like, yeah, this could have been, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. Outside of, like, this could have been a regular issue. So I'm not sure why it was an LR, outside of the fact that, you know, Peter's not necessarily prominently in it. Like, he shows up, he's in there a couple of times, but it's not like he's front and center.
Right.
So that being said, that's it for that. Cool.
Next up, I would like to talk about a really strong book out this week, Dr. Doom number 10, written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Salvador LaRocca and colors by Guru EFX. This is a primary candidate for Click of the Week for me.
I feel justified in my glowing. I feel justified in my glowing of this book for the length of times that I have.
That's awesome, man. The aftermath of the previous issue sends Doom into the black hole, which turns out to be not what we think. It turns out to be a wormhole, but I'm not gonna necessarily spoil what happens here,
Yeah, no.
but what I will say in broad strokes is that Doom lands in the part of the multiverse wherein he, Victor Von Doom, finally figured out what he needs to do to succeed, and our Vic can't stand it.
So all I'm going to say without giving too much away, like a lot of this stuff has been kind of teased even in the beginnings of this book. Like, you know, Doom was seeing visions of an alternate Doom, and we wasn't sure how that was going to go through. Then that kind of leads up to this through, you know, through the subplot of the project that they're trying to deal with that led to this. But basically, I was kind of bummed about this. I like enjoyed reading this because it's like, all right, I love Doom both literally and figuratively being faced with himself. But also it kind of bummed me out because it's like, well, you know, Doom's gonna be Doom. And there's no changing that based off of this. And that's pretty much all I'll say about it. And he pretty much goes nuclear, and like Agent 70 said, it's like, yeah, kind of just like. But so I hate the implications. Well, it's not even the implications because I kind of hate the fact that it's like, all right, now we're back to business as usual Doom, as opposed to that dark that he's been having in not only this book, but whatever this infamous Iron Man book is. Which, and now that I think about it, you know, he was trying.
This is the journey that he's been on since Secret War.
Right. But now,
and this is kind of the wrap to that.
Right, exactly. Which kind of bummed me out because I would have loved to see him kind of continue on this, but at the same time, I was like, all right, well, you got to get back to basics, I guess, or they wanted to get back to basics or something like that, which is
such a great. It was such a great depiction of it.
Mm-hmm.
You got to give a shout out to Sal LaRocca on this because of the way he plotted out that kind of eventual downfall that you knew was going to happen, and you were maybe hoping against hope that it wouldn't happen.
Right.
But because of the way it was drawn, I was like, of course that's what's going to happen. But
like, you can kind of see it right. You can kind of see when some items end up showing up during the course of this during the course of this issue, you can kind of see where it was going to a point. But yeah, like you just said, like you kind of hope it doesn't. Like, yeah, maybe it won't. No, it does.
Yep.
It totally does.
It's so funny. Let's just say Vic takes a certain artifact of the Marvel universe and dials it up to 11.
Right, one that he's actually had in his, you know, in his possession in this book.
Right.
Without giving anything away. But yeah, I was like, all right, well, and that, if we haven't said that before, I believe this is the last issue of this book. Yes. So that pretty much just kind of, as Agent 7 said, kind of ends that arc of the journey that Vic's been on since Secret Wars, which is, again, still kind of a bummer to me, but it went out in the fashion that you expected it was going to, I guess.
Definitely.
All right, so now, what were you going to say?
No, I was about to say.
Right.
What's next?
So now we can move on to another book. Because I think we start to depart after this, with the exception of probably one other that we both read.
Yeah, the only thing that we read in common after this is Excalibur. Unless you didn't read the Maestro, did you?
No, I read Maestro. So you want to do that one?
Yeah, there wasn't much to it, to be honest. Maestro number 5. This is the last issue in this miniseries. That's a prequel to the Hulk Future Imperfect 2-issue series that I'm sure Roddykat still hasn't read, but I've been trying to get him to read.
And I will.
What's that?
I said you're right, and I will.
Right. So this was written by Peter David with art by Herman or German Peralta and Dale Keown, with colors by Jesus Bertov and Jason Keith. We have here the aftermath of the Hulk's battle with the original Maestro, Hercules, with a surprise round 2. 3. Also, we see Rick Jones make his last-ditch effort to prevent the rise of the Maestro Hulk.
Technically, it's round 3, but yeah. Yeah. The only other thing I have to say about that is, like, yeah, the logical conclusion Banner speaks of is interrupted by the dead, well, by the round three, between
Right.
him and Hercules. We'll say, because I mean, we pretty much already spoiled what happened in the last issue, but whatever. Um, so, and I still have the same questions that I have, going, well, not even going into the, but been reading through this thing, in that, will Immortal Hulk explain the Rick Jones thing that they kind of mention here? Because there was a little conversation between Banner and Rick Jones saying, like, yeah, you could have been somebody, you could have been doing this and this and the other, but also implying that, well, you no longer, and maybe that's the implication that I'm taking and not necessarily is there, but I have no reason to believe that.
Right. I'm not 100% sure how the revelation of Hulk's being immortal plays into the story. I'll be honest.
Right, because it doesn't seem like Rick has still has his gamma powers in this, so which means that if that is the case, they got rid of at some point, and maybe Immortal Hulk is going to talk about that. Maybe not, because there's not really have been, this being set in the future. There has been touches on, and even in this issue, talking about the whole dad thing, but there's been touches of Immortal Hulk kind of coming up here, but not. And maybe it's just me nitpicking it up about that one particular part, but it's like,
and also probably giving Al Ewing space to finish his Immortal Hulk story.
There is also that too. So, but I'm not convinced that that part is going to get answered there either, to be honest. But that being said, this is the last issue of that, but we also know that there is another miniseries, micro miniseries, that it will be coming next month, actually, and they pretty much say that it is in this book, which we already know about because we've seen articles about it.
Right, because we look at solicits like we have to.
So. Right. No, or like we do, and I don't know if we have to or not, but we definitely do for reasons that help us out.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that was my only other thing with this, and yeah, we'll probably read the Future Imperfect at some point, very soon, since this is dealt with. And I don't know what this that next miniseries is going to deal with, but we can reasonably assume it's going to be the establishment of, the continual establishment of what we get out of Future Imperfect, I guess.
Right.
So that being said, we can move on to well, you got one more, or we want to do rapid fire?
If you want to talk Excalibur, I don't have much to say about it. So if you want to talk about that, we'll go into rapid fire right after.
Yeah, actually, I don't really have that much to say about it. I enjoyed it; it was all right. But basically, this is the X book out for the week, and the team is pretty much dealing with the loss of Betsy, or trying to deal with the loss of Betsy, and Richter's trying to deal with the leaving of Apocalypse for where he is, Aroka, whatever he is. I can't remember the name of it. Arakko, yeah. So yeah, teams like trying to deal with that. Rogue kind of steps up to be like, nah, I can't deal. I'm still having a hard time kind of dealing with the fact that she may or may not be gone. So they pretty much don't give up that, and they call in X Factor and to help out, only to be, told that, we don't know. Nothing's conclusive. So they pretty much take the investigation into their own hands. They end up going back over to Otherworld. And I guess I'll just drop in here that they kind of get some more help by way of one classic Excalibur member, Megan, now also going by Gloriana now. I still don't remember when she got this name.
I was confused. I was like, what? Who?
Yeah.
They call her both names.
Right. Yeah, like classically, they've always called her Megan. Like maybe somewhere in the later run of Excalibur, they might have given her a name. I kind of doubt that. And the last couple of times that I have seen her or her to show up, or her and Maggie specifically, and whatever, I want to say one of those times they definitely say that name, and I still don't remember how that came about. But regardless, they get some help. The team gets some help from Megan, and there's even a Captain Planet reference that Jubilee.
I did see that.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I see that. That's pretty cool. So shout out to Teen Howard and who for that one.
was about to say, and more emphasis on mutant powers being used as a circuit.
Exactly, which was kind of a crux of Apocalypse thing going into this Excalibur series in the first place also. And apparently Richter's might be taking up the cause on that one. Sounds like, because he's really was on Apoc's jock, I guess, for lack of a term, for lack of a better word. But to be fair, you know, Apocalypse saved him from whatever he was doing at the time, so I guess I kind of get it. But he was getting a little heavy-handed with it. So, but yeah, the Captain Britain Corps show back up because they also lend a hand in this. Because after all, the Captain Britain Corps is back for some odd reason that we still not know the full reason for. But we also found out that Betsy might actually be out there. Spoiler. Might.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a spoiler because
yeah, that's,
you know,
that's part of the cliffhanger reveal at the end.
Right, but we don't know what that is in what it's doing, but we do know it's definitely has something to do with her. Overall, it was a decent read, so you know, just probably not the best thing of the week, but it was all right, you know, for at least getting that part of the X world kind of squared up to a certain extent, and that they're at least dealing with it.
Gotcha. Alrighty, if you're done with that,
yep.
I will spin up the minigun for rapid fire time.
Rapid fire, cuz.
Exactly. Ejectocito. I will knock off the rest of my books. I only have 3 more books to go.
Okay.
Philadelphia number 11. This is an Image book written by Rodney Barnes with art by Jason Sean Alexander and colors by Luis Nichts. You know, I've been, followers of the show will know I've been a supporter of this book. I've been reading it regularly. We do have another chapter in the story. We find out that the key to stopping Abigail Adams may lie with John Adams. I know him. That can't be. That's that little guy who spoke to me. That's a Hamilton reference, folks. Meanwhile, the Sangsters, Senior and Junior, continue to try to hash out their conflicts over digging up Senior just when he was about to find eternal peace. If that sounds familiar, that part with the Sangsters, really just keeps carrying along over the first couple of issues of this volume. So we'll see if that gets wrapped and we get to them dealing with Abigail Adams and her current plot. So we'll see how that unravels.
And I'm just going to say real quick, shout out to Rodney's. Bing.
Ah, there you go. Next up is King in Black number 2, written by Donny Cates, with pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by J.P. Mayer, and colors by Frank Martin. Spidey finds himself trying to help a broken Eddie Brock while fleeing. That's what I meant to type. While fleeing from the Null-possessed heroes. Johnny Storm fights a holding action while Spidey retreats with Eddie to Ezekiel's bunker, where he has been stashing Dylan and some of the other heroes who are trying to stay undetected by Null and protected from Null, at least for a little while, where the last few heroes are trying to figure out a plan. Several avenues are pursued to marshal a second wave of heroes and villains to attack Null. Iron Man has his weirdest specific use armor yet, and Dylan Brock may well prove to be the weapon the Earth needs. And lastly, for me, is Detective Comics number 1033. It's written by Peter Tomasi, with pencils by Brad Walker and inks by Andrew Hennessy, colors by Dave McCaig. This is the final issue of Detective Comics before Future State takes over for 2 months and wraps up the most recent Hush storyline, where Hush tries to take advantage of the anti-vigilante sentiment in Gotham. Damian and Bruce come to a level of detente in the wake of Damian blaming himself for the death of Alfred. So that's where this, at least current iteration of Detective Comics ends. My guess is that it's probably going to take a break. It's probably going to pick up, that is, right after the break of Future State. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, wait, no, there is going to be a new creative team on this. My mistake. It's Batman that's going to maintain its creative team, but it's this book that's going to get a new creative team in post Future State. And that's it for me.
That's it for you. Alrighty. And for myself, let's see what we got here. Star Wars Adventures Smuggler's Run #1. So basically, this is a comic adaptation of Greg Pak's novel of the same name. Seemed all right so far. I have not read that novel, so I don't really have the I don't know it. I know of it. I don't know it though. So cool. Next up, Spider-Woman #7. You didn't read this, I guess, because I know you were kind of like on the head. Put this on the fence.
I've been on the fence. I did drop this book from my physical pull list.
Right.
I think I skimmed it and I saw that it was a direct tie-in to King in Black, so I figured I'd just wait.
So yeah, and it is definitely that, but it kind of felt like I was missing something from the last issue, because at the end of the last issue, you saw where it's going to tie into King in Black, but it's not direct to what she was doing at the time where it ties in. So that part was kind of weird, and it kind of made me feel like I missed something, but it still ties in. So anyway, call back to that recent. Well, I won't give too much of it away, but basically, it is a King of Black tie-in. It was a funny, kind of sort of funny that calls back to that recent Hawkeye Free Fall book, because of the him and Night Nurse thing. And then I mentioned, like, the me possibly missing something, which I didn't in issue 6. They just kind of moved it. It's a passable fastball special. Just does something that's really messed up, even for her. During the course of this, like, we know she's known to be a certain way, but like this was kind of over the line, despite the fact that she's on that drug that make her a little bit more aggressive than normal.
Right.
Which kind of plays into that. But then, something happens, and, there's someone at the end of this issue that comes back for another round with Jess. We'll leave it at that. Injustice, Year 0, #13. I believe this is the next to the last issue. I thought this was the last issue, but apparently it's the next to the last issue. The Hall takes an L in Joker's attack on it, as does the rest of the JSA, with the exception of one, actually, now that I think about it. Green Arrow at least gets one shot in with a classic maneuver, which was actually kind of funny to see, but I appreciate it, because even Joker was like, all right, yeah, I see how this is handy. Anyway, Superman is still gullible, which leads to the Joker getting the upper hand, and that's where that kind of gets left off. And apparently there's like one more issue left after this, and obviously, since this is a Year 0, as it implies, Injustice pretty much starts a certain way. So this whole series is about getting to that point, and it'll be curious as to see how that ends up, based on knowing how the series starts. Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn #3. So the Grey Ghost still has some moves on him. Quimby tries to tell Harley about his mom, who is connected to the case, and I guess we are meeting the producer person that we get mentioned of in this issue. And Harley and Duke do some investigating. Harley pretty much finds out about what we already felt we knew about Quimby. At the end of this issue. Still liking this book. I've been saying it every time I read this, and I like the world that this is set in. So I will say again, you should check this book out if you're interested. Last but not least, Transformers: Back to the Future #2. Marty formally meets Gigawatts and Skills, apparently, who is another robot in disguise, as his skateboard. I don't know when that happened, but that's the thing. That happened. And I don't know if there's a figure for it, or is it probably a figure that's with that Gigawatt figure that definitely I'm probably going to get. Transformers wise, but I don't know. So this was a new one to me. Anyway, and they all go back. Well, you know.
To quote Huey Lewis, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I gotta go back in time. But Rodimus is leading the Autobots in this for some strange reason. But and it turns out that it's all Doc's fault. And we also find out about the Gigawatt's past, future. Well, past basically for him. But and we also find out the whereabouts of Doc Brown at the end of this issue. So still a pretty good read. These crossovers can go a couple of different ways. So far, it's still kind of fun, and they kind of keep it to that point. But I've been enjoying it. And that is it for me. Clicks of the week.
Clicks of the week.
Well, we got one from one of our other co-hosts, which is Dirt's pick of Detective 1033. He says, even though it feels like Tomasi got booted from a title he was doing great on and had years of story still to go. I mean, so did Tom King, but whatever. Much like the Superman Bendis debacle, this final issue was great and felt like the finale of the series once and for all. And for me, it might be. So apparently, I guess he's dropping it. He might be dropping Detective. Is there another? No, that's that.
No,
Okay.
It doesn't look like Tim Dog.
Yeah, Tim doesn't have a pick, and that's So that's that. And for Agent 70 and myself,
I'm gonna go with the book I gave effusive praise to this week, and that being Doctor Doom number 10. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed seeing. I know that Roddykat, was kind of let down by the fact that the arc that Victor Von Doom had been on since Secret Wars finally came to kind of ignominious and inglorious end. I really enjoyed how it was, so true to character. I know, he'd been appealing to his better angels for a long time now, but he is Doom.
I mean, it was eventually gonna. I feel like we've said this in some sort of past. Like eventually it was gonna happen, and yeah, like that's not to say that I did not enjoy this issue or this book in general, because I did. Because every time I've said that, pretty much every time we've talked about it. But yeah, I still kind of hated to see it to this point. Right at this point, so. And yeah, so this is a little behind the scenes. It is. I would dare say it is a rare occasion where one of us would have a click before the show, before talking about it on the show. Like it has happened at times. So for Agent 70 and I say that because he also mentioned this before the show, right? That this was probably going to be his click. So
right. I mean, it's one of those odd weeks. It's Christmas week.
Yeah.
So our selection is a little on the slim side, but for me to have a really strong feeling about it, even before we had the discussion, it really says a lot about the quality of the book.
Yeah, there is that, and yeah, and that's pretty much that. So, and sometimes we've been surprised around this time of year where it's like, no, there's some strong stuff to come out.
Right.
Not always, but sometimes, like in rare occasions. For myself, honestly, like shout out to Transformers Back to the Future. That was fun, the Harley Quinn book. But actually, I'm going to probably go along with the Doctor Doom. Like I said, didn't like the fact that it got to this point, but it got to this point in spectacular fashion, and I've enjoyed this book.
Yeah, was a pretty awesome fashion.
Yeah.
It was so epic, and the way it's set up and drawn, it's not necessarily wide action, it's not even widescreen action shots, but just the sequence that LaRocca picks to show this and to depict it. Oh, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff.
Indeed.
Like you could just feel it happening, and that's a true testament to really great storytelling and artwork by LaRocca and a good story and a good script from Cantwell.
Indeed. So with that, we will move on, and since we already got the ad read out of the way, we will move on to the cinematic news.
We will transition or transform, as the case may be.
Haha, nice. Oh, you're not gonna do the other one?
Oh, you want the?
No, I meant you usually have another news one that you would have put in place.
Oh, the actual news. I apologize. I was just like, what is he talking about? It's late, folks.
Yeah, it is. And also a little behind the scenes, if you hadn't noticed, we are not doing this on the normal day we record, but on a Sunday, like Solomon Grundy, who was born on a Monday.
Exactly.
But yes, cinematic news. News section. We start off with the cinematic news as per usual with the cinematic news and sad news of Jeremy Bulloch, the original Boba Fett, has passed away. So Jeremy Bulloch, the original actor who was in the suit. Wait, actually, was he in the suit or was he also voiced? I think it was also voiced. I can't remember. But anyway, the original actor behind the role of famed Star Wars bounty hunter Boba Fett has passed away at age 75. His family, because I think they did end up switching his voice with Tamura Morrison. I can't remember though if that was the case. I might be, because they did so many changes to the thing. Anyway, his family confirmed via a Facebook post, though the post is currently labeled private. The information was publicly confirmed on Thursday by Daniel Logan, arguably best known as the child actor who portrayed Boba in the Star Wars prequel films. So apparently he's been living with several years with Parkinson's disease, and he died close to home near South London. So, condolences to his family and friends. Next up. Oh, actually, by the way, you might also know his name because he played Q in early versions of James Bond movies such as Octopussy and For Your Eyes Only, and also was on Doctor Who in the early goings. So, cool. Anyway.
Right. The next article is an opinion piece, a theory piece, because
one I alluded to earlier.
Right. We discussed this earlier in that the Mandalorian's Rebel cameo may reveal who saved Grogu from Order 66. This piece follows some of our thinking from that we outlined earlier, so no need to go too deep into it, but it posits that it may have very well been R2-D2 who found a way to rescue the child, aka Grogu, from Coruscant in the wake of Order 66. But at the end of the day, we're still going to, we're going to learn a lot more of this story. So
I hope we will.
You can you can pause it and guess away.
Yeah, again, like I said earlier, I may have said, I can't remember if I said during the discussion or both before the show proper, but yeah, it's plausible, but kind of a stretch. But it's definitely plausible. It's definitely possible. Next up, though, Boba Fett spinoff series. Now, we talked about this also in the discussion of Mandalorian, but Boba Fett's, matter of fact, I'm going to do these next two, actually.
Right, because we talked about it already.
Or next three, really. Yeah, because they're all about the same thing. So there's a Boba Fett spinoff that was announced at the end of Mandalorian Season 2 with the post-credit scene. We already talked about that. Please stop with the video. But we also find out that... So there was speculation after this episode of what the Book of Boba Fett is going to be, whether it was going to be either The Mandalorian season 3 or its own thing. And we come to find out that Jon Favreau is clarifying that it's going to be its own thing and not The Mandalorian season 3. So they're two separate things. And we also find out that in the next story, and last story on this one, the creative team behind the Book of Boba Fett, which is not surprisingly Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, but also Robert Rodriguez will serve as executive producers. And we also find out that Phoenix Shand, if that post-credit scene is an indication, is going to be a main part of this, but that was kind of a known, or seemingly a known thing at that point, or felt to be a known thing at that point, given, where she is at this point. So there you go. That's for that. I don't think there was anything else. Oh, there was something about, it was on, Favreau was on Good Morning in America, basically,
to
talking
clarify
about the series. Yeah, clarifying and talking about the series. So there's that. Next up,
the official Star Wars Instagram teases a Mace Windu return on Samuel L. Jackson's birthday. On the occasion of Sam Jackson's birthday, the official Star Wars Instagram wished the actor a happy one and dropped a hint that the party isn't over. It actually says the party isn't over, it's just beginning, sending a very happy birthday to Samuel L. Jackson. And the article goes on to say that while there is a chance, may not be as plausible as what I was talking about with R2 and Grogu, but there is a chance that we see him in The Mandalorian, but there might be a stronger chance we see him in the Obi-Wan series.
Right.
That's the work. So we will see, but it's nice to get that little tease.
Right. Which leading credits to, as things tend to happen in the Star Wars universe, he probably survived his fall from a great height.
Right. His betrayal at the hands of Anakin, that punk.
Right. Exactly. So, which makes sense because, we didn't see a body, we didn't see, so there was nothing to say that he wouldn't be alive. He was hurt during that fight, but, again, Maul was cut in half, and yet he lives. So, this shouldn't be a surprise if this ends up happening. Next up, though, Mark Hamill joins Star Wars fans in remembering Carrie Fisher on 4th anniversary of her death. Along with Star Wars fans across the globe, Mark Hamill is paying tribute to Carrie Fisher on the 4th anniversary of her passing, taking to Twitter and using the hashtag #AlwaysWithUs. I believe I remember seeing this post, actually, and I totally forgot about that until I saw that. Hamill posted an image brandishing the phrase, "In loving memory of our Princess Carrie Fisher." The post has garnered hundreds of thousands of likes, which probably was going to happen anyway because it's Mark Hamill. But of the likes, as countless fans similarly share their own memories of Fisher and her work with tribute posts of their own. And if you're watching the video, you can see Mark Hamill's tweet right there on the article. It also says that it's been 4 years since we lost, I guess this is a quote from Hamill. It's been 4 years since we lost our beloved princess. May you rest peacefully among the stars, Space Angel. Oh, that's another fan memorial tweet read with some artwork. So, never mind. Next up.
All right, next up, according to Kevin Feige, Chadwick Boseman recorded numerous episodes for What If, the animated series, including the episode where he ends up becoming Star-Lord. Though the late Chadwick Boseman's animated performance in Marvel's upcoming What If series will be the last time fans hear him play T'Challa / Black Panther again, that appearance might actually span more than one occasion. In an interview with Emmy Magazine, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige revealed that Boseman came in about 4 times and recorded numerous episodes for What If. On being able to work with the actor like this before his shocking death, Feige felt that, in hindsight, it's very moving.
Well, yeah, I guess so. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be a hurt piece for a lot of folks when those episodes drop. But we get a little bit more of them with this as we have. Pardon me. Disney Plus uses the wrong name for a Spider Woman episode.
Really?
Apparently, I didn't. I mean, I remember seeing this episode on there, but I couldn't remember the original name. I mean, this is a show from 1979, so I remember the show, just not that great. Anywho, so Disney Plus has the entire 16 episode run of the Spider Woman series. You should go check it out. It's quite amusing, including the first episode being half with Spider Man. But one of these, and actually, this actually mentions like one of these appearances was the show's 7th episode, which is strangely mislabeled on one of the biggest streaming services. Despite being the only streaming service to offer Spider-Woman, Disney Plus, for some reason, gets the title of one of the episodes egregiously incorrect. I mean, you've been a little hyper about it. It's not that serious. But basically, the 7th episode of Spider-Woman is titled The Congo Spider and originally aired in 1979. Apparently, instead of the Congo Spider, Disney Plus gives the episode the erroneous name of the Kingo Spider. So it was a typo.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's been a couple of typos I've seen on Disney Plus. This is not the only one, or any streaming service. But this article kind of made a very bigger deal than needed to about this. And I felt the need to share it, so that's, I lay blame on myself. But definitely check out that Spider-Woman show if you have Disney Plus, because it's dated, but it's amusing. Next up.
All right, next up, in a new interview, Tessa Thompson has confirmed what kind of royal status her Marvel character, Valkyrie, will have in Thor, Love, and Thunder. We all know that Tessa Thompson will be reprising her Marvel Cinematic Universe role of Valkyrie, and has confirmed her character's new royal title when she says, yeah, I can tease that she's definitely king of New Asgard when we find her, Thompson said in an interview with The Playlist. And as was the case in the last 4, I would say that she's a part of an adventure that involved Thor in the sense that it's called Thor, Love, and Thunder. And she'd say that there's some cool stuff going on, Thompson continued. We have some new characters. We have some folks potentially from other pockets of the MCU. And then we have some folks maybe that we've seen before. Way to evade the snipers, Tessa. This aligns with prior comments made by Thompson when Thor, Love, and Thunder was first officially announced. As new king, she needs to find her new queen, Thompson remarked at the 2019 Comic-Con International in San Diego. So that'll be her first order of business. She has some ideas. She'll keep you posted. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we already know Seth is coming back, so that's probably one of the folks we've seen before business, but also possibly some other folks. Maybe they'll bring back the Warriors 3, who got, quickly snuffed out.
Jeez.
Anyway, what's that?
I said it's awful what they did to the Warriors 3.
Yeah, they really just like snuffed them real quick. I'm like, wow, that was dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, as I take this and put this over here, Mandalorian's Giancarlo Esposito cast as Dr. Doom and Boss Logic art. So Boss Logic, we've seen him around. He does mock-ups of things and things that we wish were true. In a lot of cases for video games and movies and such.
Right.
But so what?
I said right.
He unveiled the mock-up on his Instagram account with the caption, Breaking Bad that already set up Giancarlo Esposito. The design showcases Esposito removing Dr. Doom's iconic metal faceplate to reveal the scarred right side of his face. The placement of the scars harkened back to Breaking Bad, in which Esposito portrayed Gus Fring, an unsuspecting drug lord who was famously killed by an explosion. I guess, spoiler alert for Breaking Bad. If you haven't seen that show in like how many ever years it's been off. But anyway, you can see the image on this article, or if you're watching the video right now, which feels like it goes a little further than what what the comic book version of Victor's scars go. And I could have sworn it's on the left side also, but maybe I could be totally wrong. Regardless, there you go. There's the mock-up. It doesn't look bad. Next up.
Next up, Linda Carter's Wonder Woman series is now available on HBO Max. So obviously, in preparation of the I guess highly anticipated U.S. debut of Wonder Woman 84, HBO Max announced that all 3 seasons of the 1970s Linda Carter-led Wonder Woman series are now officially available for streaming. So it's out there, folks. Like most 80s kids that grew up on these reruns, if you think of Wonder Woman and you close your eyes and you use your mind's eye, you don't think of Gal Gadot. You think of Linda Carter.
I mean, I was about to say something that's probably really bad, so maybe I'm going to not say that. But but current folks now have Gal Gadot, and she's a great woman, so I'm not going to take that away from her. But yes, definitely what Agent 70 said is absolutely the case, right? If you're of a certain vintage,
runs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then Linda Carter is definitely our folks. But there's a place for both of them in your hearts. Also, I guess this would go so far as to say that, because we already know that a lot of the DC Universe stuff, that's especially the video, DC Universe is basically changing to a Marvel Marvel Unlimited type situation where it's just got the books, and all of the video stuff is getting moved over to HBO Max. This is also in preparation, is along with that basically. But yeah, go check out that series because again, it is of a date, but it's still good. Some good stuff there. Next up, though, speaking of Gal Gadot addresses. I still want to call her Godot. By the way, I don't know.
I know. We're fancy.
Yeah, pretty much. Gal Gadot.
Fancier than it actually is. I think that's what her quote was. I remember, we brought it up at one point in like a news article.
Yeah, totally. So, but it is Gadot. Gal Gadot addresses potential Fast and the Furious return. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Shaw presumably died. He came back the next thing. Han died. We know where that went.
Right.
Gazelle went out the same way Shaw did. So there is no way in hell that Shaw happens to live. And we're talking about Shaw's brother and not necessarily the Shaw that's from Shaw and Hobbs and Shaw. Because it's his brother, and whose first name I can't remember. But regardless, they both, that Shaw and Gazelle pretty much went out the same way. So she could be, recuperating in some hospital somewhere, And I think she should come back, damn it, if she feels like it.
Just like Letty,
Right, Letty died. Yeah, Letty, exactly. Letty died also, and she ended up coming back. Although that was, some weird subterfuge in that, but and I still haven't seen 9 yet, so I guess I should probably get on that, even though the next movie's not coming up for a few months now. But regardless, Gal Gadot got Wonder Woman, so she's she's in a better place now. But during a recent chat with MTV News, the Israeli star reflected on her character's death and pointed out that viewers never actually get to see Giselle's body, before admitting she has no idea whether a return could be on the cards. Quotes, "Oh wow, I don't know," she adds with a smile. "Right now it's not on my to-do list, for obvious reasons." Further into the conversation, Gadot also explained what it is that she looks for in her big screen roles, saying she's drawn to epic, strong female figures. Since the Wonder Woman, and I believe she's also doing Cleopatra coming up, which is why this article has come out, because I guess she was talking about that. Oh wait, 9 is coming out. I don't know why I get confused. 8 was the last one. 9 is coming out.
Right.
Yeah. So I still haven't seen 8, regardless. And obviously haven't seen 9 because it's not out yet. So.
I'm so tired. I didn't even want to jump in and correct it.
Yeah, that's fine. I caught it. So, and apparently, wait, hold on. Oh wait, that's one. I was about to say Fast and Furious is out in the UK. What the hell? But anyway, next up.
Next up, something we talked about. I'll just touch on it. Wonder Woman 1984 ropes in a stunning blast from DC's past. We spoiled it earlier.
Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily have to go back to it then. But if you go back to a couple of articles, you can kind of get the connections. Next up, Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins reveals Wonder Brothers made her change the first movie's ending. Basically, she was talking to IGN, and she says that the original end of the first movie was also smaller, but the studio made me change it at the last minute. And so that's always been a little bit of a bummer that that's the one thing people talk about because I agreed and I told the studio we didn't have the time to do it, but it was what it was. I ended up loving it, but it's not the original end of the movie. And she also added, this time around, you know what I loved about it? I love that it has both at the end. We had visual effects, a big battle, which I dug into and had such a blast executing, which felt like, which I felt so satisfied with. But ultimately, the end of the movie is much more pared down and less effects heavy as the first one was. Because I think there was another article about that. Apparently, that was something they wanted in the first film, which a lot of people, to her, what she says in here, you know, that's the one thing people talk about with that first movie is the bunch of effects in the end of that last movie. Anywho, moving right along.
Next up, Wonder Woman 1984's director Patty Jenkins recently shared which DC and Marvel superheroes she would next want to direct on the big screen. During a live Twitter watch party of Wonder Woman 84, a fan asked Jenkins which superhero character she'd like to direct next if she could choose any hero. Jenkins replied, "Thank you for the question. Probably Superman, Spider-Man, or Black Widow." Okay.
She actually probably could, especially the way John Watts is doing. You know, the way John Watts is going with the current Spider movie. She probably could actually do something pretty decent with Spidey. Who knows? Black Widow, sure. Maybe Captain Marvel would have been a thing, given a thing. Who knows? Next up, the CW's Batwoman releases a massive season 2 synopsis. I still have yet to see season 1. But we also know that Ruby Rose is being replaced by Javicia Leslie, and this article pretty much goes into delving into who's going to be around, what's involved, and what's going to happen with that, which we don't necessarily need to get into. Next up.
Somehow Zack Snyder is still in our lives, and he reveals the Joker's major role in creating the Justice League's nightmare timeline. The Joker's involved with the Snyder Cut's time travel plot. Time travel?
Well, that's not. I mean, yeah, because remember we saw like the Flash.
I know.
We saw that stuff. So that's not outside of realm possibilities.
I know. But seriously, so as Zack Snyder's Justice League fast approaches, more details are being regularly revealed by the miniseries' director, as well as a look at Martian Manhunter. Snyder also revealed a new slightly extended trailer and announced when we can expect the new version of Justice League to be released. Speaking to the Film Junkie, Snyder revealed more about the Nightmare Timeline, a worst-case scenario feature in which Superman is corrupted by Darkseid. The timeline was memorably included in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice in a scene which saw Batman fighting back against Superman's regime. The vigilante was warned by a time-traveling Flash about the future. But the Flash screwed up because Snyder made it. So he arrived too early in the timeline for his message to make sense. Hold on. What do we have here? What's it? The Joker. Wait, hold on. Snyder mentioned the possibility of a comic book with artist Jim Lee to continue the Snyder Cut storyline, explaining the Joker is somehow involved in the stealing of the Mother Box and using it to create the treadmill. Because in my mind, Cyborg was always going to do the math and figure out this is what we got to do to go back in time to warn Bruce correctly.
I don't feel so good.
That's how I feel reading all that.
So basically trying to shoehorn the Joker in. Again, this is another thing I kind of hate with the Snyder Cut thing, because all this I meant to do this, I meant to do that, and blah 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 BS. Probably that came after the fact. But anyway, so that is what it is. Also, but I will go so far as to say that I usually had a little bit more problem with the Avengers using time travel than I had with the Justice League, the whole shenanigans.
Oh yeah, because it was shoehorned into whatchamacallit, into Ant-Man's story basically. So
Right. So
or based on Ant-Man's story, which is definitely some timey-wimey stuff as has been described.
Doctor Who reference. All right.
I was about to say I didn't even know that was a Doctor Who reference.
Totally is.
I'm pretty sure I took that from Screen Junkies.
Who took it from Doctor Who?
Exactly.
So you know what? For them through you, whatever. I appreciate it. I like the reference. Anywho, Roku officially deactivates DC Universe app. So yeah, as we've said just a few minutes ago and previously, DC Universe is changing. In fact, changing next month. Now that I think about it, into a Marvel Unlimited type service, which means they're getting rid of the video stuff. So there's no need for it to be on Roku, which is just probably not true. You could totally do a service like that on a Roku or any streaming thing. Who wouldn't want to be looking at reading comic books on the big screen TV? A lot of people, turns out, probably. I don't know. Anyway, the app has been uninstalled from Roku ahead of the relaunch of the platform, and with it, the viewer's ability to access DC TV shows and movies through the digital device, which is still up on the site, at this point. But the change happened shortly after HBO Max had reached an agreement to be carried on Roku, says comicbook.com. And now users get an error message when they try to use the DC Universe app. So they can't read their books there, but, or anything else. Which, again, I'm not sure who was doing it. I feel like Tim said he might have tried or tried it. I don't know.
No, I was about to say, and I think PC_Dirt also read books on the TV.
Right. So, somebody tried it. I don't think it had a version of that app that did work like that.
I think I clicked through like one book and I was like, that's enough for me.
See, the Xbox app might have, but I ain't never use it. I don't even turn my Xbox that often anymore. So anyway, so that's the thing. So there you go.
I
Next
put it on Fire Stick and I was able to do it. I just, it didn't appeal to me, so
Sure.
It didn't really matter.
Right.
All right. Next up, Ed, and Eddie and more Cartoon Network classics hit HBO Max in January.
Who? Really?
That's just my age showing.
Hell, I know about these shows, and this past me.
HBO Max's January 2021 editions include classic Cartoon Network shows like Ed, and Eddie, Codename Kids Next Door, Encourage the Cowardly Dog. Per Warner Media, Ed, and Eddie is slated to start streaming on HBO Max on January 1st. Happy New Year. In addition to Ed, and Eddie, also on January 1st, Codename Kids Next Door will come out. Courage the Cowardly Dog will come out. And The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy will also come out. We also get Long Live the Royals, which is like a more recent Cartoon Network stuff. And season 2 of Craig of the Creek. Season 1's already on HBO Max. And season
really good.
8 of 10 is set to arrive on January 9th. And I greet that all with a collective who?
Hey, Craig of the Creek is really good. And out of all of that stuff mentioned, I like Codename Kids Next Door. The rest of that can kind of go. But I know there are people younger than us who love those shows. But in addition to actually those shows coming to HBO Max in January, we also are getting Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, The Mummy, and more. Because also, again, like I said, a lot of stuff from DC Universe is getting shuttled over to HBO Max. Yep. So yeah, Batman the Animated Series on HBO Max. Cool. If you didn't already have a way to watch this stuff, now you do, or now you will. And Batman Beyond, which I know some people ended up liking. But also, see, Batman Begins, the Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises are going to be there. Superman Doomsday, Man of Tomorrow, and Superman Returns will also be joining the DC lineup, which I could have sworn Superman Returns was already there. I might be wrong about that. Or maybe it's on something else, or maybe it's on Netflix or something. I don't really know. Regardless, so the rest of that stuff is also going to get there, and as well as some other stuff like Mad Max Fury Road and Kill Bills and things. But comic-wise, everything I said previous to that is relative. Next up,
Spoilers for people who are watching The Expanse. Razorback's new name is a tribute to fans. The Razorback was once Julie Mao's racing skiff. Since her death, the lightship has been commandeered by Bobby Draper, who used it in her and Christian Avasarella's escape from Jules Pierre Mao's ship, the Guanxian. As of the beginning of season 5, the Razorback has been officially renamed the Screaming Firehawk, a tribute to fans who helped save the Expanse from cancellation. Okay, good job.
I ship Bobby and Christian, and I don't care about that other ship that people are trying to do lately. What are you doing? Stop it. Expanse is a good show, by the way. If you like good hard sci-fi, I still need to catch up on the last couple of seasons.
I've got things about it. I just haven't picked it up.
Yeah, based off books, yada yada. If you hadn't heard about it by now, it is what it is. But yeah, I've enjoyed that show. Next up, Daft Punk releases complete edition of their stunning Tron Legacy score. So basically, the soundtrack's been out there, but there's been some other tracks that's been in other places, and now there's a complete version that puts everything together, and it is going to be available, or it is now available on Spotify and Apple Music. So if you, like me, love the freak out of that Tron Legacy soundtrack, and I don't know too many people who didn't, you can go ahead and get all of that.
Next up, there is an in-story reason Cobra Kai heads to Japan in season 3. Ralph Macchio revealed that financial issues with Daniel's business gives Cobra Kai an excuse for him to visit Japan and stop by Okinawa in season 3. Okay.
He's not a man who will fight for your honor.
Oh, no. As in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Macchio reveals that the narrative rationale behind Daniel's Japan visit is to help salvage his car dealership financially. Okay.
And not to be confused with the comic book writer, editor of Marvel Note, by the way.
Exactly.
Which has always been funny to me. But also, didn't he become some kind of right-wing nut? Anyway, you know what? We're going to go right past that and get into the comic book news.
More transition.
And I'm talking about the actor, not the comic book writer.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Yes, meanwhile, at the Venom, I don't know where I was going with that. Anyway, Venom reveals that why the Avengers can't trust Spider-Man. So basically, for the second time in as many as months, someone else gave up Tony Stark's number, and apparently this time it's Spider-Man. So spoiler alert for Venom 31, which has probably already been out since now. Next up.
One moment. All right. America Chavez's solo series lands new release date ahead of her MCU debut. Yay. America Chavez is finally returning to comics. She's going to star in a 5-issue miniseries by Kalinda Vasquez and Carlos Gomez titled America Chavez Made in the USA, which will reveal more about her powers and origin and promises a shocking ramification for the Marvel Universe. Let me see when this release date is, and we can move on. One moment while I scroll through this article. Roddykat is sharing it with you guys right now. Mm-hmm. Where is this?
Probably at the very
All right, so it goes on sale in March 2021 for Marvel Comics. Yay!
Yep, the cover looks nice. We'll see how that pans out. She should have had a solo series, which she did. Star Wars.
She did have a solo series.
I know.
They launched.
That's what I'm saying, but
they were doing. They did it when
killed it.
They launched hip hop covers.
Right. Yeah, but it died on the vine. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Star-Lord's creative team pitched a male love interest in 2016. This is actually kind of spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy #9, which came out last week. And we kind of gloss over this part because we found out in this issue that Star-Lord's bisexual. Just like his former love interest, Kate Pryde, by the way. So yeah, we found out he's bisexual and in a polyamorous relationship. Yay. However, the hero could have been in a same-sex relationship much earlier because Chris Anka revealed that he and Chip Zdarsky, the creative team behind Star Wars. Why do I keep doing that? Marvel's Star-Lord's ongoing series in 2016 had developed and designed a character intended to be a love interest for Quill, and you can see the mock-up for that from Chris Anka. If you're watching the video, with his caption of what they had done. I remember seeing this art, or seeing this tweet. I'm like, okay, cool, interesting. Next up,
Wally West may take over the Flash mantle from Barry Allen again.
right?
DC has the possibility of Wally West carrying on the legacy of the Flash when the Scarlet Speedster's main ongoing title returns in March 2021 following the Future State event. Okay, it's teased.
Yeah, basically. Which I guess Wally West fans will be happy about because given, his current, or I guess coming out of Heroes in Crisis, people are like, what? Why? Huh? What are you doing to Wally? So, I don't know, maybe this will put him back into prominence. Who knows? Bendis teases new Justice League series with major roster shakeup. Brian Michael Bendis teases a major shakeup to DC's Justice League. As he wrote on Instagram, what? Wow. Or wow, what? I guess. Which almost had me going back to Hamilton on that, but whatever. Stay tuned. Accompanying the text is a David Marquez drawn and Tamara Bonvillain colored image of 9 superheroes in silhouettes. Green Arrow, Black Canary, Hawkgirl, Hippolyta, Black Adam, Naomi, Superman, Aquaman, and Batman. And you can see the said image right here if you're watching the video. I'm just going to pause it right here. Like, I probably have already jumped off of Justice League thanks to Darth Metal, whatever it is.
Dark Knight's Death Metal!
Yeah, whatever.
Excellent!
So I don't know if Bendis being on board is going to get me back on it, although I would like to see a lot of these characters interact. That being said, let us move on.
All right, next up, Damian Wayne strikes out on his own in solo backup stories in March Batman titles. Damian Wayne will feature in a solo backup story in March's issues of Batman and Detective Comics. This is following up on the events of Detective Comics 1033, which we discussed earlier tonight.
And I guess I'll take this time to mention, like I should have before we started doing this section of the news, is that the solicitations for March 2021 are now out, including DC's. So some of this news is coming from that. Harley Quinn takes over promotion of her new ongoing series from DC. I remember seeing this issue, this on the Twitters. Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossimo are launching a new Harley Quinn ongoing series at DC in March. And ahead of that, DC has found a spokesperson to help promote it, Harley Quinn. In an email sent out to retailers earlier this week, DC relayed what they say is Dr. Harley Quinzel herself talking about this new era. And there's a quote here from that, which I probably won't get into, but you can see some little bits of art in the article here, and a video that has absolutely positively nothing to do with that is playing on this stupid site, and also the cover. So there you go. Next up.
Okay, in some Dark Knight's Death Metal silliness, some spoilers here. DC's most powerful hero just lost his head. Oh, screen rant. So, that's a screen rant headline right there for clickbait. So the Spectre, one of the most powerful heroes in the DC universe, just literally lost his head in a battle with the demon Surtur, and Thor was nowhere to be found. This is from the Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Crisis on Infinite Earths book by writer Steve Orlando, artist Mike Perkins, and colorist Andy Troy. I believe this was out last week.
I believe so.
So, yeah, this describes Surtur literally chomping the Spectre's head off, and that's pretty graphic. So, what are you going to do? It's a Dark Multiverse tie-in, though, so.
Right. Also, not the first time in DC history a character's got their head bitten off. But anyway, and also, you know, not the craziest line from an or not the corniest line article title that I've seen from any outlet, because we know the rest of them have them also. Anywho, Infinite Frontier Zero reveals the next era of the DC universe. This is a 64-page one-shot. Presents infinite possibilities for the world's greatest superheroes on March 2nd, 2021. So this is when Infinite Frontier, is going to be released. And it basically says here is that the DC universe enters its next phase this March with the release of Infinite Frontier Infinite Frontier number 0, 64-page one-shot, like I said, from the most creative and innovative storytellers in comics that set the table for new tales, talent, and characters for 2021. It should be noted this is coming off of DC Comics website, so you can kind of see the bend there. As Dark Knight's death metal exposes our heroes to the multiverse's darkest threats, and DC's future state provides a glimpse into the possible future of the DC universe, this blockbuster one-shot propels our heroes into the current day and into a world of endless possibilities. Kind of sounds like a 52 new 52 situation.
Just a little.
So yeah, we won't. So there is that. Next up.
Alrighty, Justice League Who's Who in DC's Infinite Frontier teaser. So there's a teaser image that is that with lots of hints for several characters that we're familiar with. You know, one of them is what Roddykat just discussed, that being a new composition for the Justice League with some, let's say, new Justice Leaguers, like new Avengers joining that have never actually been part of the Justice League before.
Oh, weird. That's never happened before.
What's that?
Oh, weird. That's never happened before.
Exactly. Oh, you know, it's never happened before in a Bendis book. Never.
Huh.
You know, there'll be a couple of new recruits, namely a Bendis creation named Naomi. The Titans are back with Nightwing and Donna Troy leading the charge against Lobo. Okay. I mean, I like these characters being part of the Titans, but Cyborg is still allegedly part of the varsity, so that's still kind of annoying. The Suicide Squad is made up of characters who are being highlighted in James Gunn's film. Heroes in Crisis, I guess, is going to be dealt with in a sense. Well, I guess there's heroes not in the sense of dealing with that storyline, but there's going to be heroes dealing with crises. So, you know, it is decent after all.
And also, it sounds like if that other article is to be believed, the Wild West is probably going to be The Flash.
Okay. And the only discernible villain seen in the teaser image is Darkseid. Okay.
Yeah. Yay, I guess. But also, I mean, like, hey, if we think about what happened with Marvel now, like I said, that was the other, thing we were joking about when, Miss Marvel and them joined the Avengers.
Right.
Which was actually not a Bendis book, I don't think. But either way. Revisiting Jim Lee's no 5G, no reboot comment in light of Infinite Frontier. So this is a Newsarama article, basically. After the Infinite Frontier thing that we just mentioned was announced, they decided to go back and, revisit and scrutinize, I guess, the comments Jim Lee said about no 5G, no reboot. So, what you can read in this article, if you so please. Next up,
Jim Lee brought holiday cheer with free sketches for essential workers. Jim Lee spent Christmas Eve delivering free comic sketches to essential workers in California. He put a message out on Twitter. He's looking to bring some holiday cheer in person to those who are putting themselves out this night. For those of us fortunate enough to be home with our loved ones, don't worry, we'll keep our distance, he says. The collection includes drawings of Batman, Joker, and Wonder Woman. Later that night, Lee shared a video and photo of him delivering drawings to workers at Long Beach Memorial Hospital and North Hollywood, respectively. It's far from his first charitable offering during the coronavirus pandemic.
It's true. And again, if you're watching the video, you can see his Twitter posts about that. So cool. Next up, Invincible animated series debuts comic faithful action figures. Shout out to Tim for writing this article. The upcoming Invincible animated series for Amazon Prime has revealed its first set of action figures, which remain faithful to the comics created by Robert Kirkman, Curry Walker, and Ryan Otley. The first set of figures are titled the Invincible Animation Deluxe Action Figures and is a Diamond Select Toys release. And you can see that there's Invincible right there. There's his dad, Omni-Man, and other pictures. Well, not even other pictures, but a couple other shots of those two figures. So, I believe they are going to be released. Oh, they go on pre-order on the 23rd, which is already passed, December 23rd, and they will be $24.99 each and will be released in the summer of 2021. So if you care, there you go. Have at it. Next up,
NECA showcases Homelander and Starlight figures from The Boys. Feel free to take a look at this article. The figures look pretty dead on, so they're pretty good. But NECA's quality control is kind of hit or miss, so take that for what it is.
Indeed. When are they going to be out? Next season? Well, they're going to be out just like there's no date for it. So there you go. Look forward to that whenever. Baby Yoda is the latest Google AR object you can add to your home. So, doing AR for Google is not a new thing, and this is not the first time. So if you want to see this in action, you could just you go on your phone, do a search for Baby Yoda, Grogu, or the child on your phone. It will bring up the usual searches, but there's somewhere in there that will say View in 3D. That if you scroll down a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, because I think I did this a couple of days ago. Tap that and then click View in your space to conjure up the child, complete with blinking eyes and wiggly ears. Crank up the volume and you'll even hear Grogu's signature gurgling noises. So if you just can't get enough of Baby Yoda, aka Grogu, then here you go. This will tide you over until you get those figures, if you don't already have those figures, or something of the like. Next up,
The Mandalorian's Darksaber joins the premium Force FX Lightsaber line. Star Wars and The Mandalorian fans will be able to wield or cosplay with their own life-size replicas of the Darksaber soon enough, courtesy of Hasbro and the Force FX Elite brand. The replica, which is currently available to pre-order for $214.99, combines advanced LEDs and entertainment-inspired lightsaber sound effects, making it the most realistic Force FX lightsaber yet. Its blade not only boasts television-accurate sound effects, but also unique lighting effects like a progressive ignition, battle clash effect, molten tip effect, light up hilt, and the first ever Star Wars FX Elite lightsaber white LED blade edge. The Darksaber hilt can also be detached from its extended blade and placed on a display stand. Have you ordered yours yet?
Not yet, and I was actually about to say I really, really want this, but that's a lot of money.
It is, but although, listen, take it from me, who has some of the Marvel Legends stuff, the replica cosplay props.
Mm-hmm.
These are expensive because they light up.
Oh, I know. I mean, I'm well versed in the Force FX stuff and the quality of them, and like I said, I'm not saying they're not worth the price, but it's still a lot of money. But also, when I first saw this, I saw another listing from Entertainment Earth that was like for $250.
Even higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting their markup.
Mm-hmm. So this was a better deal, a slightly better deal. Through wait, what's it? Who is it? Is this it's GameStop?
Huh? Oh, GameStop?
Yeah, this is like it says GameStop. So this is probably the way to go while they still have the sale up, folks. I don't know when the sale is going to end, but as of the time of this show and the writing of this article, which was 3 days ago, you might want to hit that up.
Hold on. I just clicked the link because now I'm curious. Let's see. Waiting for it to load. Load.
I just clicked off from it, so it's totally.
You can still do it.
Yeah.
You can still click the order.
I just did it. So yeah. So yeah, there you go. 215 for a Darksaber, which like I said, I really wanted.
Yeah, release day is June 1st of 01.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, June 1st of 2021. That is
right.
So.
Yeah. So cool. Next up though.
All right. Okay. Oh no, this is you.
Star Wars Vintage Collection celebrates Boba Fett with Kenner's Slave One ship. This was inevitable. Boba Fett's iconic ship, the Slave One, which recently, y'all know it's been in the Mandalorian. We already know this. They're basically putting out a figure available in May 2021. It is available for pre-order right now for $150 from Entertainment Earth, and is exclusive to Entertainment Earth. So I was about to say maybe you can find a cheaper price elsewhere, but it doesn't look like that might be the case if it's exclusive. But yeah, it looks like there you go. Here's pictures. Slave One with the carbonite Han Solo. Here's the compartment where the thing turns up. Or turns to the side rather. So it's basically the Kenner thing. There's the box, the old Kenner box. It's all there, folks. Hit it. Next up,
according to a recent leak, the Black Panther Operation update is coming to Marvel's Avengers video game soon with new story missions and a Wakanda region. A whole new Wakanda update with the first ever proper raid has been leaked for Marvel's Avengers, along with the long-rumored and previously leaked playable Black Panther. Okay.
Yeah.
Good fans of this game.
I believe, and I know this was a calculated thing to where I think they scheduled us to come around around sometime in February or Black History Month. I don't know the exact date, but I think that's when they scheduled to say this. And I know the Fortnite thing is already out right now, but whatever, who cares? But also the things look good there, so whatever. Next up though, Demon Days X-Men kicks off Japanese horror story from Marvel Stormbreaker Peach Momoko, which is an awesome name. Peach Momoko, one of Marvel's inaugural class of Stormbreakers, who's been pretty much already doing work, but nevertheless, we won't go back on that again. Breakout artist whose work the publisher is highlighting as significant will make her mark on the Marvel Universe with her first interior work in March 2021. Momoko will write and draw Demon Days, a 5-part prestige format limited series, marking her first interior comic book work for Marvel. The story takes place in Japan and focuses on a group of Marvel characters reimagined for what Momoko describes as a traditional Japanese yokai-style horror story, which tells tales of heroic samurai bewitched and enticed by demons. So, cool. Next up. Do like the art style looks good. Anyway.
That?
So the art style looks good on that.
All right. Wheezy and Walt Simonson are reteaming for an X-Men Legends X Factor story. The creative team and life partners will revisit X Factor for a new in-continuity story. Husband and wife creative team will reteam on an X Factor story for Marvel's upcoming new X-Men Legends title, which will tell in-continuity stories set in the past by high-profile X-Men creators. Wheezy was previously confirmed to be writing an upcoming arc in the series announcement. Now we know it'll be illustrated by her husband, Walt, who has recently been posting X Factor character sketches on his Facebook and Twitter accounts. I can attest to that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm actually kind of looking forward to this X-Men Legend thing. Not to be confused with the video game. And what they plan on...
Action figure.
Well, yeah, there's that too. But yeah, to see what the series is gonna do. Next up, new top secret Spider-Man costume to be revealed next week. So Marvel again solicits out, so this is coming from that, and basically this is saying that Amazing Spider-Man number 62, which is due out March 24th, excuse me, will unveil a new suit for Peter. And again, and this is where I said the spoilers, because this is the article I was talking about earlier. Because it says here, following the traumatic events of Sin Rising, Peter Parker will need a new suit for his face-off against, I won't spoil it, in the next arc of writer Nick Spencer's hit run. The top secret costume will debut in the issue that I just mentioned, and etc., etc., etc. Next up,
Spider-Man and Monica Rambeau are, quote, re-teaming up before WandaVision. Spider-Man will soon be teaming up with Monica Rambeau, the former Captain Marvel, ahead of the latter's appearance in the upcoming WandaVision on Disney+. She's going to join forces with the Wallcrawler in King in Black symbiote Spider-Man #3 by writer Peter David and artist, and that's being charitable. Shots fired, son.
Agent 7 and PC underscore Dirt's favorite artist.
Monica has enjoyed something of a renaissance in the past few years, and the story will continue that trend, involving the hero in a prequel story to Marvel's current blockbuster event, King in Black. Okay.
Yeah, and basically why I said as opposed to say teaming up, because one, there's been Marvel team-ups before. I'm pretty sure where they have teamed up before, but also
right.
the original story where Monica gets her powers in Amazing Spider-Man annual, 16 or what it was?
I don't remember the number, but yeah, it was an annual. Yeah. I would just say that the whole point of the symbiote Spider-Man book is that it is told in retro continuity. You know, it's retroactive continuity. It's told in the past. So
right. So, yeah, Amazing Spider-Man annual 16. There you go. Anywho, but the way they phrase it here is like, wait, why did it have what that has nothing to do with WandaVision? But okay, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, last but not least, Black Knight returns with a curse in March. I think we've probably talked about this book, or unless it was we were talking about something to lead into King of Black, probably. But anyway, spinning out of January's King of Black, Black Knight, this March Marvel Comics will launch Black Knight: Curse of the Ebony Blade, a new limited series by writer Cy Spurrier, who writes the January King in Black one-shots, and artist Sergio Davila. The new title will explore Dane Whitman's relationship with his legendary cursed sword, the titular Ebony Blade, as this becomes the target of a new villain's obsession. Marvel states the series will revive and revamp aspects of the of the Black Knight's mythology, a sentiment Spurrier himself echoes. So cool, I guess. And also, we know these characters are going to be in Eternals at some point, so, you know, sure, put them back out there. Next up. Well, that's it, actually. So we are done with the news section. So one more ad read from me, please, sir.
Our last ad read of the night, and you know when we're in a hurry, this is what we do. Keep our podcast free by shopping at Amazon. Visit cspn.us and click the Keep Our Podcast Free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down and click on the Amazon link to shop. Purchase items from Amazon as you normally would, whether it's books, music, electronics, jewelry, apparel, or those gifts you just forgot to get. For every purchase made on Amazon through our link, Amazon sends the CSPN a payment that helps us keep the Comic Book Chronicles podcast free for our listeners at no extra cost to you. Amazon.com through cspn.us. Do it today.
And as we come to an end of another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles, thank you each and every one of you for coming out. I know this was a bit of a long one because of the because of Mandalorian and Wonder Woman 84, but it was worth it. I may consider splitting this up into two. I don't know. We'll see how that works out. But if not, one way or the other, you will be able to find it out there in the aforementioned place. In the place we're about to talk about. I have been Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can find me at CBCaps on Instagram. You can find Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram, and apparently Chinatown in the John Wick universe.
There you go.
You can find PCN_Dirt on Twitter at that, and you can also find him at Pop Culture Net on Twitter, also popculturenetwork.com, and those umbrella sites they're in, and probably still on Byte under Comic Reviews, no vowels. Tim DOGG98, the Osiris of this issue. You can find him at TimDOGG98 on Twitter. You can find him at CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles Twitter account. You can also find him on the Click Nation on Twitter, the KLIQNATION, also theclicknation.com, but mostly you will find him on Comic Book Resources, where he's over there writing his face off. You can find this here program on the Coastal Podcast Network, that's CSPN.us.
Do it today.
You can also find this on your podcast personal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or the Coastal Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. And you can also find us here mostly every Thursday night, with the exception of this next one because it's New Year's Eve. But normally Thursday nights, 9:30-ish p.m., where we record live, usually on the Click Nation's YouTube channel and or twitch.tv/Comic Book Chronicles, all one word.
Hit the like and subscribe buttons.
Indeed, yeah. If we get some more subs over at Twitch, hopefully we'll get some more streaming of some stuff over there out of the way. I still hadn't done the one I said I was going to do, but it'll happen. And that is a promise. That being said, like I said, next week, New Year's Eve, so we will not be recording a show on Thursday night, but there will possibly be a show next week that'll come out a couple of days later, which means the audio will be pushed a couple of days later after that, or at least a day or two later after that. But since they've been coming out on Sundays anyway lately, it's kind of what's a day, right? That being the case, enjoy the rest of your 2020 such as you can, and let's just hope for a new and better year into 2021's.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Merry New Year!
Exactly. Oh, you know I'm gonna pull that up for next show. You just know it. But that being the case, stay tuned for that. There might actually also be another show between here and there. I'm not sure when I'm going to put this into the feed, but the aforementioned Mandalorian Season 2 Treasury Edition, where we pretty much bundle up all of us talking, all of the talkings we did on the Mandalorian Season 2 into one episode, just in case, you're finished with it right now and want to go back and do a recap or hear our views on them.
There you go.
And I'm also stalling because I'm trying to find this stupid thing. There it is. Okay, so this, folks, has been the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
Wakanda forever!